They're in the
Yeah.
computer lab.
Yeah, Donna was on the committee.
Yeah, no, I know, I just didn't know if, it's strongly recommended, but it did say.
Okay, there you go.
All right,
Wow.
Okay, we don't.
All right.
let's give everyone a few minutes to disconnect the sound and everything.
Right, so that's gonna say it's up and running now. Okay? All right, thank you.
I thought that Debbie would be.
I think it's Justin was here, and we thought we had it all fixed.
Yay.
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah.
It's definitely be junior.
Yes, yes.
Let's give everyone a few minutes.
No, I know, I know we're going on, but
Nobody's to be here.
I
I don't
can't
think
hear.
it was.
No, I can't hear Holly from here well, I'm like.
I can't hear Molly.
Yeah. She's got the best mask out of all of us.
You can hear the other ones, I just have to protect, I guess.
Wow.
I had to get my mask too. Yeah, I had
That one seems more helpful.
because I have a filter in it, so it doesn't suck into my oxygen.
That's the worst. I hate that, you're talking.
Yeah,
I forgot.
I know, I touch my face so much more with a mask on now, I'm like,
I know, right? Well, that's why I wear hand sanitizer on my neck.
oh, there you go.
I
I have it in my bag.
Yeah, there's so much getting it.
Yeah.
I have some more.
How many participants does it say? 40?
You guys can read that?
How many do we have, what's the maximum? It's a bit more there, isn't it?
I don't even think
I don't think there is. Okay, in Brownsboro, maxed out 100, if I can read, they had to buy $1,000 package, and how many have we maxed out at $100?
Well, maybe they changed it, it was unlimited for a while, maybe they changed that when we first started remote learning, they opened it up. So there was no
Can we do
limit on
a sound
time.
check to make sure that people can hear you?
Yeah, I was going to, as soon as, I was gonna give more, I was gonna give a few more minutes for people to sign in, and then I was gonna go around and do that. So I'll just give everyone another minute. And we caught up?
Yeah.
All right, so it's 7:27, we'll call the meeting to order. 6:27, sorry. Did everyone hear that? So listen, we're gonna be a little bit muffled because we all have our PPE on, so we're gonna do our best to project. Just a reminder for all the board members, it's gonna be, gonna sound a little muffled. Try to project towards the microphone, so people can hear, and we just do the best that we can.
Oh, it's my.
There's a microphone there, but I don't know if someone's somewhere else. So just make sure to use your outdoor voices. All right, so let's see, the meeting's called to order. Why don't we get the fourth quarter grade updates out the way?
Thank you, Chairman Lurie. I'm giving you a very brief summary of where we are. Originally, we had 61 students who were signed in incomplete for their fourth quarter work or for an exam they did not do. And out of those 61 students, right now, 17 students have completed all their work. To date, I only know about 13 with their grades because teachers obviously are not on site and they're looking at the work, either scanning it in, emailing it, or having paper copies if they don't have internet themselves. 15 students are still coming daily and working. And I will say, of the 32 original students in attendance, we had no challenges on taking their temperature, having them 6 feet apart when they come in, and wearing some kind of a face mask, either shield or the cloth mask. It's been great. We do know that we have 13 students working at home. That's by choice, not because they don't have internet, but because they prefer to be at home during the summer. 2 students who were seniors declined the opportunity to make up fourth quarter work. They didn't want to do it. They didn't need that credit to graduate, so they flung the coop, so to speak. 4 students have moved. They did not participate in taking the opportunity, and I still have not been able to contact 10 students or refugees. Even though I tried, they're not responding. So that's where we are today.
Does anyone have any questions for Mrs. Freetag?
And the letter that went home with the report card said that time frame for completing the remote learning was from July 6th to July 30th. You know, the teachers would like to have it wrapped up.
I'm sure.
Is that okay with the board?
I agree. I think that's perfectly fair.
Good, thank you. I mean, it's been a lot of extra work, but like the kids who taken advantage of it, it's been good. It's been good for them, so thank you.
All right. All right, so let's move on to the big topic, the reason that we're having a July meeting. The recommendations from school reopening committee. So Wayne, you were gonna start us off with that?
Yeah, I would just like to thank the board for having a July meeting. Typically, it's the 1 month where we don't meet. I'd like to thank all of those folks who are in our audience tonight, all those people that are here, for their attention to what is obviously a serious topic, something that we didn't plan on a year ago when we set up our meetings for the year. I would like to publicly thank Karen Craig, who chaired the school reopening steering committee, for the great work that she did for us and on behalf of the community. And all of those members of the steering committee, which included representatives from parent groups, both the high school and the elementary, 2 nurses who really needed on this committee and worked hard. All of the various groups that were represented in kind of that specialty task force group that helped us take the PLC work that was done by our teachers and paras in June, assemble and coalesce that work, and then begin the topic of trying to look at other stakeholders, the parent surveys that you have in your packet tonight. I think that was a big part of the intel that helped them really understand the needs and desire of the community. And then looked at the CDC guidance, the guidance from the state. So much was happening and it was so fluid, it seemed like every meeting there would be something new. So I just wanted to thank that group. And I do understand the significance of this issue and how hard it was for the community to look at the options. Undoubtedly, fear is a factor here, and the emotion side in some, trumps logic frequently. So it's hard, and some of the conversations that members of the steering committee had were very difficult, and I applaud their effort in trying to keep the kids first and making sure that students and staff safety was a priority all the way through. So as the board hears the report tonight, I would hope that the board would accept the report, and I would hope that by August 7th, we would be able to communicate something to our constituents. They're obviously very interested in how that reopening is going to look. So those recommendations that Karen will speak to tonight, I think are very important as you consider. I mean, this is your choice, your decision. As you consider what is in the best interest of your community, I think Karen's clarity around what this looks like, your ability to ask her questions and get that response. And then Karen will be counting on those chairs of various task force groups who are there in the audience and who can respond when those issues come up. So it's more about question, answers, and kind of an understanding in the aggregate of a very complicated process that this committee has come up with. Now, this was a July 20th decision, and it has definitely a timestamp, kind of a shelf life relative to things changing so quickly. So I just want you to keep that in mind. We understand that the guidance that we thought in the afternoon of the 20th, 2 or 3 weeks from now, might look good. So we get all of that. So in that sense, Karen, I would turn it over to you and thank you once again for the work, the effort that went into this report.
Thanks, Wayne. I'll try to speak up. And thanks to all of you for not only your interest and your dedication. This is hard, we understand it's hard for the board as well. I want to thank the committee. I know there are a lot of them out there. It's not just the chairs. No one really assumed a chair. Maybe they did, but it wasn't formal. Everybody contributed, and it was a team effort. We had, I want to say who was on this committee because you should know, and the public should know, these people worked hard. They worked every day, Monday through Thursday, on this work. And we met 2 of the days as a whole group, and they met in subcommittees the other 2 days. So right here, Joe Bogio representing the elementary school as principal, Lindsay Blake as a parent rep from the elementary and middle. Hi. Nicole Buckley, a preschool special educator. Sarah Burgess, a middle school special educator, and also president of the Teachers Association. Debbie Chaltadrico as the technology director. Elise Coach as the nurse at the elementary school. Myself. Julie Fenrich, director of special ed. Donna Foster, teacher at the elementary school. Donna's here, thank you. Ann Freitag from the high school. Jody Holmesquist, a business teacher at the middle high school. Peter Hughes, a math teacher at the high school. Laura Kelsey, a paraprofessional representative. Erica Kelly is a parent rep from the high school and also a administrative assistant. Sean Lee, who's here as a facilities director. Pat McLaughlin, our new director of curriculum instruction assessment. Marianne O'Malley, our HASC director. Victoria Robel, a grade 1 teacher. Sean Robinson, the new assistant principal at the high school, middle high school. Karen Thompson, our director of personalized learning. Patty Wallace, our new special ed coordinator at the elementary school. Wayne Woolridge, our superintendent, and Jan Zalmarais, our middle high school nurse. We had a wide range of representation on this committee. Just to recap quickly, what you have in front of you is not only your report, which we had sent to you on Monday. I didn't include the surveys, which I just neglected to do. I think I was tired. I apologize for that. But the survey results from the district are attached. The summary of the parent survey results. And then also thank you, Kayla and Sean, for involved with the community connection group at the board level. We have those results summarized as well. And you can see, I think when you have a chance to digest this, and if you want to speak to that, we really considered this heavily when we were making our decisions. We also considered heavily the social emotional learning considerations that were offered to us by our school social workers. We also considered heavily the teacher input and the para input that happened for the first 2 weeks in June. And there's more, we've done more. But what I want to say as well is that, as Wayne alluded to, so much is happening so quickly. Even today, the commissioner gave you some new information at his commissioner meeting of school leaders. He talked about something I'll reference in a minute regarding professional development. As you know, the state guidelines were even released last Monday. We started our work in May in this committee. We received state design and reopening recommendations on June 29th, and that's what drove our work. There were 10 recommendations by that committee that then evolved into the guidelines that we received the guidance we received last Monday. But those 10 recommendations initially from June 29th are how we divided ourselves into subcommittees. So we wanted to represent all those recommendations. But please remember that whatever way you go, there'll be need for further implementation. As much as you want the details right now, and we want them too, and the district wants them, we can't give you those details so we really know which option we're going to go down. And these are recommendations. We understand there will be details that need to be fleshed out. But if it's decided, for example, if it's decided that we're remote, we don't need to deal some of the internal ones as specifically right now. So we need to make sure all that's in line. Having said that, a lot of the details are fleshed out, and you'll see some of them in here. That'll evolve as well. I want to also explain that on page 4, where I just read the names, there are also the three models that you asked us to look at. One was full access. And I just want to emphasize that full access is not traditional. It's not, there's no way it's going to look like it looked on March 13th. We can't have kids, 23 kids coming into a classroom that's 900 square feet. So it's not gonna, we can't have kids sitting together on the road in a little group. So when we say full access, it's not traditional. And we struggled with that a little bit in our committees. I think people were saying, what's the difference from full access and hybrid? We really struggled with that. Full access is not traditional. Limited access or hybrid is a little of both. Some in and some out. And we know right now, your principals will tell you that some of our parents have already informed us that they're not sending their kids back. So even if we all come back in, we're gonna have some kids at home. And the state guidelines clearly say that kids have the right to do that. And parents have the right to do that, of course. But we need to provide education, and there's a way to do that. And no access is just remote learning. So I just wanted to emphasize the definitions there. Also, page 12, the PD recommendations are a summary there. Talks about what we're recommending as far as the actual PD, and it goes into more detail later on. But what it doesn't say, and I just neglected to include this, we talked about it a lot, that we're hopeful, and this committee is recommending, that we take the 3 days of professional development, one being October workshop day, one being March, one being May, that's currently in the calendar, and move them all to the front of the year, so that we can really spend the time we need to spend up front, making sure everybody's on the same page. Having said that, that's got to be negotiated between the union and the board, and we're just hopeful, and this committee is recommending that those negotiations can be open for that purpose. So I didn't put it in writing, I should have, but I forgot to. And also today, what the commissioner told us, and I think I heard rumor as to it, but I heard him say it today, is that we will be forgiven 3 days at the beginning of the year, so that we can work on procedural needs, so that everybody's on the same page. What that means is, in a typical year, you have 180 days for students. We would be able to count 3 of those days, not seeing the students come in or at home, but spending those days working with our teachers on all the new protocols that we have to pay attention to, a variety of things, things like hygiene, social distancing, screening, just so everybody's on the same page, and even more. Which way we're going to walk through the hallways, how we're going to get in. So it's going to be your call, and you need to vote on that, I think. We can take up to 3 days. We don't need to use all 3 days, but you can grant the district to push off starting school 3 days into the calendar for kids and using those 3 days for teachers. I would recommend. I didn't get to talk to the committee about it because it just happened today, but I would recommend that we need all of those days. We need those 3 days, and we need the other 5 days. We already have 2 at the beginning of the year, but we got the March, October, and May days, so we have 5. There's a lot that needs to be done. And finally, these are unprecedented times. We're all wading into uncharted waters, and you can see from a couple of the comments I just made, we're getting new guidance every day. Every single day, something new comes out, and I'm sure there's more to come. So as much as we want to tell you all the details right now, we don't even know what's coming down the pipe. We're doing the best we can. Everybody has worked so hard, and I have faith that when schools open here in Hinsdale, we're going to do all we can to provide the best education for our kids. I have confidence in our educators. I have confidence in you. I know this is a challenging time for you as the board. I'm sure you have sleepless nights right now because this is a huge responsibility. But I have faith that you'll do your very best to represent what's best for this, not just the community, but also the students first. I've always said that, students first. I wish you the best of luck. So I know you're going to have questions. There are representatives. I'll tell the people who are on the line, just to keep it a little less chaotic. Sean and I talked, Chairman Laird and I talked about when questions come to me, I may ask one of you to answer the question. I like that. I think it's great if we can hear right from the people on the committee. But rather than just chime in, let me call on you. I have Dan, who is here. People told me he would be here remotely. And if they're not there, I'll call on somebody else if you couldn't get in. Okay. Ann.
Julie is having a problem, but I told her that if she can get in, I'll turn herself on.
Okay. And also, if you feel in your remote you have a comment to make, you can make comments, and then maybe Ann can somehow signal that somebody wants to add something to what's already been said. Would that work all right?
Yeah, we don't have a specific citizens comment section on the agenda tonight, so that will be limited.
Oh, okay.
And we'll discuss with the board, as they come up, we'll discuss how we want to handle that. But, we're hearing this all for the first time, it's a lot of information.
Yes.
And we really need to focus on the information that is coming into us. So I guess we can ask right now, and it will be at the end, I would hold specifically to the 10 minutes. This is as loud as I can talk. I'm sorry to everyone out there, this is as loud as I can talk. So do we want to do a citizen's comment at the end, or forego that for this meeting?
I think it's important.
All right, so we have no,
For this
yes.
meeting, no.
I think if we hold it to the 10 minutes, because I could see there's going to be
Right.
a lot of
You'd have to hold-
questions and comments, so as long as we hold it.
Jim?
I agree with you.
All right, so we'll do a citizens comment session at the very end. We will absolutely limit it to the 10 minutes. We usually have a 10-minute section, and we will absolutely hold it to that. But we will have a citizens comment section at the end. So, do you have anything else to?
I was just gonna say, you are the only people who have this right now, except for the one that's from right here. And if it's okay with you, we know this is a public meeting, but they don't have the report. So would it be okay to post this report online tomorrow or not?
It's what do you guys? It's up to all of us. It's not just my decision. I think that it can be confusing to have a lot of stuff up there if we're only going to follow with one thread.
Yeah, I
You know
agree.
what I
None
mean?
of this is written in stone.
Right,
These are
and
up.
it's so much information, I think it could get really convoluted.
I mean, personally, I would feel more comfortable if we had some time with it and we could kind of flesh some of it out. And as we started getting down closer to something that we're going to do, then put it out there. But I think right now it might be actually too much.
I just anticipate people wondering what we were talking about, so I just.
Oh, I'm sure.
I just want to point out, since it's a phone meeting, it is available if someone requests it through the right to know, but I wouldn't say post it. We're not hiding it because it's available, but I wouldn't post it.
So,
I just wanted to cover that in case somebody tries to say one.
okay. All right. I just need to make myself a note.
I agree, it would be confusing to post it, though. We can write draft all over it, and that might not be good enough.
Okay. We'll probably revisit that a little bit. Is there anything else you had, or?
You want me to just walk through it, or how do you want me to?
Well, let me just, yes.
Okay.
Yes, I do. Let me just start off with some guidance for board. Obviously, sound is gonna be an issue. People already have a hard time hearing us. I can't talk any louder, without screaming, so just try to vocalize as much as you can. Let's make a concerted effort to not talk over each other. When we're asking our questions, we'll do one question at a time as we've been doing. If you are gonna have a multi-part question or follow-up question, please let me know so I don't turn the floor over to someone else prematurely. Once I do turn the floor over to someone else, let's make sure to give that person, time to speak and ask their questions. And it's very, very, very important with this that all of you have all of your questions answered as best they can, as best as everyone here can. But if you're not comfortable, don't let me move on, or don't let Karen move on to another section until you're comfortable with the information you've got. Okay, it's very important. Don't feel rushed. Right? Ask the questions that you have to ask. Is everybody okay with that? All right. So yes.
I wouldn't mind taking the microphone and putting it on the table while the person is speaking.
Oh, okay. That might help.
But I would turn this down too, this white noise isn't also hurting.
So, Sean is heading for the roof. Turn that on. So it'll be warmed up for a while, but once it gets too warm, you can turn it on.
And could you message the group and just tell them we are trying to do some stuff to improve sound? All right, so Karen, I'm gonna turn it back over to you just but I just want to briefly say, that one thing, you know, we got a draft on Monday. And the one thing that I will say, in looking through it and understanding as much of it as I could with explanation, one thing that I think is very, very clear to me is that a lot of people put a lot of time into this. I mean, a lot and a lot of effort. And you can just see it by the way the committee stuff is lined up, the way you have it laid out. So I'm sure I speak for all of us that we are very appreciative. I mean, just immensely appreciative to anyone who put the time into this, because it's just evident, you know, that people really care and put a lot of effort into this.
Thank you. And that's really true. It was a team effort. Joe was right there with me all weekend. He wasn't with me physically, but we were back and forth on the phone all the time, bouncing things off as I was trying to put the last pieces together. But everybody really worked hard, and we couldn't have done it without that team. So thank you.
And with that, I'll let you do your thing.
Okay, so there are 8 major task force areas. I'm trying to think, I'm just thinking about balancing time. So you decide how long you want to go with each. You just said take as much time as you want, and that's fine. But just keep in mind there are 8 task force areas, okay? And in the first 13 pages are the main part of the report. All the rest are appendices and all the detailed reports. So I think if we focus on the first 13 pages, and then if you want more detail, you can dig in the appendices and see the last report from each task force subcommittee that gives you that detail. Okay, and we did have a unanimous decision on Monday that we wanted this report to go forward as it was, which was pretty powerful. You know, that was pretty awesome. So starting with, you know, the beginning, I just actually did a general introduction, which we've already talked about, and then we outlined our process, which you have in front of you, showing what we did in May and in June and in July until today. And you can see links were provided to the New Hampshire guidance, and also the guidelines from the state were actually attached. The guidance was so long we didn't attach it, but we have provided it to you this evening. Thank you, Anne. So we surveyed parents. We had a lot of staff input in June, and we actually shared updates weekly. We took your charge seriously about being transparent. We sent lengthy updates, and we tried to ask for feedback. We did get some, and we appreciated that. I do know that people also shared things with committee members personally, and they shared them at the meeting. So we were able to address it that way as well and tried to close the loop. I'm on page 6 now, which is the beginning of the 3 options. As you know, we were charged with 3 options: remote, hybrid, and full access. And we'll start with elementary school if you're okay with that.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
So the elementary school with the remote model, we talked about having obviously the kids at home, and I will defer this to Joe and people on his committee, we have elementary school reps here of Donna, and I'm not sure, Lindsay I think is on the line, and I'm not sure of other people who are representatives. So if Joe wants to tag on one of those in a minute, but do you want to speak to that remote, or do you want me to summarize, Joe?
Why don't you just take the lead?
Okay, okay. So the schedule is going to be based on, you know, we're all going to use the same delivery model. We found out from the feedback from parents in the spring, actually, that was the biggest issue, is that different teachers use different methods. We did the best we could. Everybody turned on a dime on March 13th and did the best they could, but it ended up being a variety of methods. And so if you're a parent of 2 or 3 different children and having different ways to access learning, it was very challenging. So we are using a common delivery model, using Office 365 Teams. We will have laptops for grades 2, 3, 4, and 5 at the elementary school. And they will have 2-hour blocks of instruction, and each grade level will try to be unique, so there's not overlap in case families need to support students at a certain time and they aren't trying to support everybody at the same time. There will be direct instruction online for most using this common model. And they will have office hours and intervention times built in. There will also be planning and prep time Friday was going to be just a half day for students to check in with the teachers and to finish work from the week. So the teachers could then do more social emotional learning lessons and also get specials in for the week and have meetings. Teachers have to have meetings to plan collaboratively. So the AM, the half-hour learning blocks with half-hour office hours and half-hour interventions. So I think it's a total of 2 hours. Is that right, Joe?
Well, you're talking about preschool now?
No, I'm sorry. I jumped down to the
Yeah.
bottom. No, that's it for
So
the,
it's-
go
Yeah,
ahead.
it's 2 hours blocks, 3 2-hour blocks with those definitions that Karen described.
And then preschool is a little different. It's outlined at the bottom, which talks about an AM program being 3 days, a PM program being 4 days, and those are half-hour blocks. And we do hope to offer parent and student professional development on how to use these teams. We can't promise folks will take advantage of that, but one of the things that, Donna, could you describe what you're talking about with your videos?
Part of what we use during.
Part of what we talked about with training and whatever is like some of what we did for the students. We used a program called Screencastify where we could actually model what we were doing on the computer and what we were expecting the students to do, and they could follow along with it. And then we saved it as a video that they could use as a resource. So we were thinking along the lines of that would be a good way to put out some of those videos for teachers as well, parents as well, teachers too, and the students, and then they'd have them as resources. So it's not always that they had to come in for something, but they would have it available through Teams for the students or whatever. And it really was a good way to show it because you could model every single piece of it.
Thank you, Donna.
You're welcome.
So that's what we were envisioning for remote, kind of in the summary section. What we found to be a positive for that is that we know it'll be much more structured than it was in the spring, and we feel like we could turn on a dime at any time and employ it. I mean, it won't be perfect because we still need to ensure that folks are trained. I'm talking about parents and the students. The teachers have all been trained. We had that training in June. We feel that it may be the safest alternative as far as health. No worries about disinfecting and saving. We'll save on PPE costs, and students would get their meals still. So those are all pros. Cons were that it was probably most inconvenient for parents due to work responsibility. We know from the parent survey, they want the kids back in. Over half of our parents, if you look at the parent survey, over half of our parents want to be fully back in. So we also had a concern about the connectivity issues for those who don't have can't connect to the internet. And pre-K and K and 1 will not have devices. So that would still have to be paper packets for them. So it's harder to get student attendance and engagement, and we'd have to deliver those materials to them. So any questions about remote that I'll ask Joe or Donna since she's right here, and then if others are online, we can ask Lindsay, I think is online. Any comments about remote?
So for the 2-hour blocks, is that going to be Monday through Thursday? Students will be expected to kind of attend class with whatever their device is all the time?
Yeah, go Joe.
So our vision is we're going to pair them up by grade levels. So like K1 would have a 2-hour block, say between, just for example, 9 to 11 would be their time. Then 11 to 1 would be lunchtime and the office hours and intervention time. And 1 to 3 would be the time for the teachers to do their planning with each other. Then the 2nd and 3rd grade, they might have their office hours from 9 to 11, and their direct instructional time would be 11 to 1. And then their time for interaction with the planning and students would be in the afternoon. So lastly, the instructional time would be intended to be like online right at that time between 1 and 3, 4th and 5th grades doing their instructional model. And it's direct instruction going on during that time. And then in the other 4-hour blocks, they have the office hours for intervention and working in their planning time also. So it's 2 hours of remote instruction. If kids can't get to the remote instruction, then sometime during that day, there need to get to it asynchronously through a video thing and sign on saying with the parent, or if they're old enough by themselves, I got to it, at 6 o'clock, I did the assignment, turned the assignment in, maybe if they're able to. Does that answer your question? So we talked about breaking it up, it's gonna be a lot more like what a classroom would be, where you give some instruction, and then you might know from yesterday that you four back there, you need some help on fractions that you didn't do very well in the fractions that we practiced. So we might take you aside into a channel, they're called in teams, and have a small group instructional time with them while the other kids might be working in other small groups. There's ways to set up the groups within teams that you can kind of simulate even what's going on in the classroom. But that is going to be a focus, depending on what happens. That's where we're going to end up focusing our professional development time coming up, is to okay, we got to zero in on what's best practices in remote instruction.
That's why we need that PD time.
Yeah.
And planning time. Thanks, Ann.
I'm just
I'm not
afraid
sure.
they
My
won't.
mask is thick, so. Thank you, Ann. Just because you mentioned the surveys, and that, the majority of the survey responses, or 50 whatever % of the survey responses were for back in, I see that we received 143 responses to the survey. How many families do we have in the district? Because I assume this is 143 families, because.
Debbie had that number.
I think it was like 260 or something, or 360, I don't know.
I think it's 360. That
Three-
seems to be what when we do the packets.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of,
It's like 360, 375, somewhere
okay,
in there.
because I was ballparking it, and that's what I kind of thought. And so 360, 375, all right. And I know we also did a Facebook poll, and I have, it's not, I don't see how many exactly, but did anybody check to make sure that,
There were some overlap.
okay, that's what I was gonna,
That's why
okay.
I'm looking at the district one, because I don't know exactly. Donna knew an idea, it's what, 8 or 10 or something, Donna, you saw?
There were about 27 that did both.
Oh, did both, okay.
Yeah, so that's why I thought we needed to look at the district one, but I thought the comments, especially on the ones that
Were very helpful.
Friday, were very insightful. and helpful.
Okay, so, I mean, it's wonderful, the 143 responses, but for families, really, that's less than, half.
But a typical response on a survey is 10%.
Oh, so that's great. That's great then.
I thought it was great.
Great response.
I know, but to say that 50% of our families want them back, that's not really, it's 50% of 143 responses.
50% on the survey.
Yeah.
The survey results indicated 50, actually, I think it's 51% or something. I don't have the percentages here, but 74 were wanting all in person and 67 wanted either all remote or a mix. Only 20 of the responses wanted all remote.
Okay, thank you.
47 wanted a mix.
Thanks.
That's just on the district survey, and I don't really know how to count those.
Did we have any survey for the faculty? Did they have any sort of survey?
Faculty gave us 2 weeks of input in June.
Yes, yeah, we had June 1st through, I don't know the dates, but the first 2 weeks of June, we spent working in PLCs, giving them guided questions about what it would look like for remote, hybrid, and full access. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Ann, but I think it was pretty clear. I heard you said they want them all in or all out.
It's a huge challenge to be teaching here and teaching children elsewhere at the same time. And that's, I think, a lot to ask. And I recognize it was, I think, not what they wanted. They didn't want everybody here, maybe a few out. We understand there are some health issues. So that's a possibility, but if it's going to be half and half.
Yeah. So we have a lot of input, but it wasn't a vote. It wasn't a survey, but it was a lot of input that was pages and pages of input that we went through every day at 2 or 3 o'clock at the end of each day. We talked about the day and said, do we need to tweak it? So we have all that. Those, we called them considerations, to keep those in mind as we did our work.
Jim?
I
And do we know what the consensus for the elementary school is too? Like, do we have a feel of teachers? Just because I
Yeah, we do.
really understand parents, or I feel like I understand like where parents are coming from, but I don't really know where the staff is coming.
It was very similar to what Ann said. The end result in the recommendation here is 5 in favor of our version of all in, and 3 in favor of remote, either all or nothing, was, and it's been consistent. In the middle of June, when I polled faculty, it ended up out of the 7 grade levels, 5 grade levels thought some version of all in was going to be best, and others felt at that time hybrid half and half would be best. Two grade levels felt half and half would be best.
And things change every day. So, I mean, I think as we get closer, people are getting more nervous. It's an anxiety-ridden time. Yes, Julia.
I think Joe may have just answered my question, but I did have a question where it says that after looking at the guidelines, full access model was recommended 5 to 3. I wasn't clear on what the number of 8 represented.
This task force, his task force.
The number on our committee.
Okay.
We made up subcommittees.
And then that came forward to the full committee, and the full committee supported that recommendation. Okay, and then again, in June, when he surveyed his staff, 5 grade levels were in favor of all in, and 2 were in more favor of a hybrid model at that time. But that's how things have changed. Now they're not in favor of hybrid. So that's the remote. The next thing, and any other questions?
Any other questions on remote?
Okay.
Whichever one you want.
Okay, we're going to go right into hybrid. Jim, did you have a question? No, okay. Hybrid, you can see right there, a pro is that the teachers would see the students each day, but it wasn't going to be a full day. So it was going to be a half day, and students would see the teacher in person and some of their classmates, because we can't have all of them together, so they were going to have to be spread out. They would not have to worry about disinfecting the playground after each use. I might need you to speak to that, because I don't know why. But the SPED services can take place in the resource room. There'd be more spaces if we only had half the kids in at once. Basically, that was a big part of it. You'd only have half the kids in the building at once. That made the nurse feel comfortable. It made a lot of people feel comfortable to have fewer kids in the building at once. But the problem was that it was a half a day, and it was going to be scheduling for parents as a problem, daycare issues, work, transportation. There were a lot of problems, a lot of glitches that got in the way. We didn't know when we'd really fit in the specials. We thought they'd have to be take-home activities, because you can only do so much in half a day. So that was the cons for that. And I think in looking at time, I'll go ahead and say all in. Basically, the bottom line is, there's a lot of words there, but the bottom line is that this was the highest choice of those that were responded from parents, as the highest percentage choice from parents was all in. Teachers seemed to be, that was the majority of the elementary school who wanted all in. Transportation works better, special ed services. We have the room to spread the students around and still meet the guidelines. And you'd see all the students, it would be a sense of routine. But you would have to take your masks off to eat and drink. You wouldn't have as much time to do full collaboration, because you have to keep cohorts of students together. They couldn't sit together on rugs. And it would be difficult with behavior issues when you're socially distanced. I believe when you're trying to address those behavior issues is what the intention is there. Joe, anything else?
No,
Either of those?
That's pretty much it.
The recommendation from this committee was full access, the third one we just described.
For the elementary.
For the elementary school.
Anyone have any questions for that?
You can't do it, so I'll keep moving this.
Sorry. I have a lot of questions, so I can do and then go around and whatever, but I have a lot of questions about all in. So I guess I'll just go to the first one. Well, okay, so I have to look, and I apologize if I ask something that's in here, because when we got it, it was hard to look at it sideways on the laptop, and so I'm sure I missed some stuff looking at it. and we can go through it more. That's why, we're here tonight and hopefully come back and make the decision. But, so physically, when we're going to be physically distancing, is it, the CDC says 6 feet, I know the state says 3 feet. What is the recommendation in here, 3 or 6?
3 to 6.
All right, so 3 is like the minimum, like there, so not theoretically, practically, there's going to be some kids that are only 3 feet apart.
So originally, in May, June, we were looking at
Get me this place.
saying, let's just say there's 10 kids that we could have, 'cause that was the group gathering size. Then we went with 81 square feet per kid, and we had some ideas around how we could space kids out with that. And that offered a huge, in my opinion, a huge personal space bubble. Ultimately, we settled on 50 square feet, which is the state guidelines. And that's basically like a 7x7 square. So in theory, for certain classrooms, you can do the 800 divided by 50 and come up with, I hope I do this right, 16 kids. That would be 100% capacity. You have to allow for some other furniture in the room, obviously. You're not going to just clear everything out. So we went with like a 75% number. So for an 800 square foot class, you could have 12 kids now. So our class sizes are such, and our room sizes are such that with the exception of 5th grade, we're basing it on 50 square feet, 7 foot square, gives it 3.5 on each edge is 7 feet really in between people. So I think we're gonna, there'll be some issues except for 5th grade, and they'll be taking up the whole 3rd floor of the building now. But there will be the opportunity to keep closer to 6 feet than to the 3 feet.
Yeah. So what you're saying, so the 50 square feet is closer to the 6 feet? Is that what I heard you say? Or
I think you have a question with the range
okay,
now.
yeah, now it's raining, so that's great. So the 50 square feet is closer to the 6 feet that the CDC recommends. That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And so if we were to say something like it has to be 6 feet, like say that would be, then that would impact the plan because we need more room, more, what I mean? If we were to push and say, be strict about it, 6 feet, not that we are, I'm just saying that would impact stuff. Because right now you said 5th grade's taking up the whole 3rd floor.
Right, because
Yeah.
they're the biggest class, we're going 2 classrooms.
Yeah. Okay.
But 6 feet, what really changed was using 50 square feet, which gives you 7 feet between people,
Okay.
versus 81 square feet, which was giving us 10 feet.
But we're still 6 feet.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. I think that's it. Well, for now.
Okay, so I have quite a few questions too, so I'll just start at the top of my list. So one of my questions was if there are sick children, so if someone comes in, spikes a fever, it said there would be someone to stay, and obviously we would keep sick children separated from children who are not sick, but what if there are multiple sick children, because you don't necessarily want them all together, because someone might have a stomach bug and someone might not have a stomach bug. So is there plans to separate sick children also?
I can try to answer that. I can tell you that just time in here that I'll say, as I said in the beginning, we don't have all the details down yet.
Right.
We do know we need to separate these kids. We do know we will have isolation spaces for kids with these symptoms. And he's assured me we have those rooms. We have rooms for that isolation space in it. So we don't have all the details yet. That will have to be the implementation stage, as I alluded to earlier, but we do know we need isolation kids. We need to develop protocols in it. And I know the nurses, and Elise is on the line. I think Elise is on the line. She has strong feelings about this and great concerns about this.
Right.
So All right, maybe we'll have her come in a little bit later, but she
that
actually
was-
worked really hard on one of these health protocols and, that you see. When we get further in and you look at the task force report, you're gonna see a lot of detail that they outline, and probably not enough to answer your specific question, Kayla. That still needs to be fleshed out. Joe?
And since we're waiting for Elise, what we had talked about is not 100% sure about having only one child in one place, that we could set up, like with physical distancing, we could set up the room, or maybe even use the stage and put up a blinder, and we'd have enough space for at least 3 people, but we'd have barriers that would allow us to have multiple children in one spot with one person being able to supervise. And then the goal is that we don't maintain those children for a long time. We're going to need the parents to come on board with arriving in a timely manner when their child turns up with some of the symptoms that we decide need to be dismissal.
And Sean worked on getting some special lights, I think, too, right, Sean? So UV lights that are going to help with sterilization. Okay, I'm speaking that so for people can hear in the audience.
Elise can talk now.
Okay, what was the specific question for Elise about isolation room?
Yeah, the plan for keeping children separate and being separate.
Keeping children separate and safely, is that what I heard?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're gonna try to come up with like a decision tree on whether someone has COVID or has something else. And it's gonna be really hard to determine because obviously we don't know. And we know that a lot of children are presenting as asymptomatic as well. So we're gonna have an isolation room. Joe and I talked a little about it. It's not 100% clear what's gonna happen yet, but it sounds like we're gonna have one large room, one staff member fully PPE'd to watch over the room, and then enough space between the children. All the children that are in the isolation room are going to have to be wearing masks. And then assuming there's, let's say maybe, I think it would be a lot, but let's say 6 children in an isolation room at a time, there'd have to be quite a bit of space. And then the same thing that Joe said, we're really going to have to count on parents to have an emergency backup that can get there quickly, that they can get there quickly. If they're thinking their child may be sick, they should not send them to school that day. We're gonna rely a lot on parents to monitor their children and keep them home, even if they're just a little under the weather, to kind of deter some of those kids going into the isolation room at all. And then I think if the kids are wearing masks and one has stomach virus and one has coronavirus, that should be enough protection with the social distance space and the mask wearing, that they won't cross-contaminate. And if someone does come back testing positive, then I would call the New Hampshire State, the New Hampshire State Human Services and Health Department, and then get guidance from them on what to do next.
That protocol is outlined in this, they spent a lot of time, they took direction from the New Hampshire Health and Human Services Department. Thanks, Elise.
Julia.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean. I guess, first of all, one of my questions is about the kind of the order we're going through. I know all of these questions, a lot of these questions are answered later in this presentation. So I'm not sure if we're kind of bouncing around or if we should address these questions now because we're in the solutions. But as I read the presentation, these are our options and the recommendations, and all the health concerns, et cetera, will be addressed later. If that's the case, then I can hold my questions till we get to that portion of the presentation, and that if that's going to be treated separately.
Yeah, I thought that's what we do, but I know I heard Sean say that people shouldn't hold back on questions, so I was just trying to answer them as they came up. But
I appreciate that, but I
prefer that we just go through it, and when we get to the health.
and when we get to the health question, we would ask those. Okay.
Presenting the options, we'll tell you what our
Right.
recommendation was. So
Okay.
if there are any questions about the options, and I'm sure that's some health questions we came up about it.
Right.
But we will address those later, I think.
Do you want to hold your health question?
Yeah, that was, I just wanted to see if we were going through what the recommendations are, and then we'll go through each of the pieces, then I'll hold the questions until they're into that section.
This is a very difficult decision. I mean, elementary school, really, every school, both schools really have to go back and forth on this a lot. And so this was the last decision, the one that, after a lot of conversation and really looking at things, their recommendation and the full committee, the full steering committee agreed that the recommendation, and remember, none of these are things we love. We'd love to have the kids come back in and just be like things were, but we know that can't happen. So given the circumstances we find ourselves in, of the three models, we think this one makes the most sense for most people. Okay?
Just one, I have a question, but I'll hold that. But so, it says somewhere here, and I hope it's in the elementary, I think. Correct me if I'm thinking of something that's in the high school, but so the teachers, oh no, right here it is, lunch served in classroom. So, so if the lunch is served in the classroom, the teacher, is that the teacher's lunchtime as well? No, okay. So, but the teacher will be there while the kids are eating. Somebody will, an adult, okay.
An adult will be with them.
Okay, an adult would, and then the teachers would have lunch some other time, and the kids would be doing something else with a different adult, or, okay.
Maybe the teachers would have lunch while the kids are having lunch, and the other adults have their lunch at another time.
So,
Really how it worked, I mean, like in a usual setup, that's how it is, Holly, like.
oh yeah, the teachers are having lunch, and they go to their specials, or they go to the, yeah.
Recess.
Yeah.
Okay. They have lunch during recess.
We are
Okay.
required, they need to have a lunch break.
A break, not just eating, a break. Yeah, okay, that's what I wasn't sure, okay, all right.
Okay?
Yep.
Can I go on to the middle high school?
Is everyone okay with this, or are we ready for middle high school? Sounds like we are ready for middle high school.
You're a little Vanna there.
All
Thank you. All right, middle high school, similarly, remote is, as I described for elementary school, we're using the common delivery model of Office 365. I don't think there's a lot of difference in the elementary school and middle high school remote option, as we described it there. We do feel it's appropriate and we feel we could employ it very nimbly if the risks to health in the situation determined that we needed to go back to remote, or if that's the way you go, we think we could do it. Anything you want to add about to remote, Ann, for the middle high school?
I know that Jody is with us, and she co-chaired the task force with Peter Hughes, and they did a great job. So Jody, if you want to add anything about the remote model.
Hi, this is Jody. So I think that, we worked really hard on this. We're not loving any of it. And we also understand that remote is what we may need to pivot to down the road. So we need to plan for it very carefully, just the same.
Thank you, Jody. And the hybrid model, is really a modified full access for the middle high school. And this is where we kind of got confused about hybrid and full access, but it really is kind of full access. It's just not traditional. So I believe, and Ann, correct me if I'm wrong, the full access model as it's described here is more of a traditional model that we really don't think we can go to right now. And we don't think it's even possible. So this middle high school is recommending this, what they call a hybrid or modified full access, which at this time is that they're all, we have a luxury here that many of our classes are small enough to operate almost traditionally. There are some classes that are too large, and so with that model, they will, if they exceed social distancing requirements or maximums, they will be divided into 2 cohorts, and they would receive direct instruction from the teacher half the time, and the other half of the time, and I don't know if that's a full day, and can check.
One day they're with the teacher, the next day the other group is with the teacher, and those kids are doing an application of what they've learned remotely, but in the building.
It'll be in the building. They'll be in the building. They'll just be in a different location. So half the teacher, they'll be with the teacher half the time and with another supervising adult the other half the time while they're practicing what they've learned or continuing to do kind of remote activities in the building. Correct, Ann?
Right.
So that's a traditional 5-day schedule, including an advisory period. We think advisory is really essential, actually K through 12. I didn't talk about that, especially in this social emotional wellness for all. We're really concerned about our kids and the social emotional well-being, and our staff and our families. We're concerned about all of them. And we want to make sure that we are checking in with each other across the board and making sure that we're there for each other. And so we, every day there'd be a check-in and advisory and some specific tasks. And there's a whole committee that we will talk about later on that dealt specifically with that topic of social wellness for all. And they spent a lot of time on that. So the suggested model at this time is hybrid, and I don't know if anyone else from the committee or Ann has anything else they want to say about the middle high school. I think we covered a lot of it in the elementary. I didn't mean to do that.
Was there a vote? We had a vote tally for AGS. Do you have a vote tally for?
It was unanimous for the hybrid model.
Oh, okay.
The committee voted on Monday, and I believe.
It was
actually, you
unanimous.
voted last Thursday, and it was unanimous.
It was unanimous. They reported it to me. That's when I put the report together last weekend.
Okay. Does anybody have anything for, yes, Colin?
All right, so the hybrid model, and I read, kind of interpreted it not correctly from was when you just explained it. I had interpreted it that, okay, so the class is too big, so it's split. The teacher's teaching in their room with half the class, and then half the class is somewhere else in the building with a supervising person, another adult. It sort of sounded to me when I read it that the teacher would be teaching and those kids would be watching them on Zoom. That is, because that could be really difficult, I would think. But that didn't sound like it when Karen just explained it. Or do we not know?
We did discuss that option, and I'm glad Jody's here because she's really the techno whiz on this.
Yeah.
There may be lessons, for instance, and not necessarily for the split classes that are on site, but say I'm teaching Algebra 2, and I know I have a student at home who has a health issue, and I want him to see me teach the lesson. So I may go to Office 365 and record myself as I'm teaching so they can watch it, either live or later on if it's recorded.
Oh, okay.
So there's that option there. And I think, Jody, can you talk to that?
It's a split class, Jody.
Yes, so I'm thinking my business math class is a good example of this. I have 16 students in that class. So half of them will be in with me. Half of them will be located someplace else in the school building. And I'm not sure that's there might be one or two that are also trying to do this from home. Well, there's a lot going on here. I happen to use a product that the students could join me on their laptops very easily with. But let's say I'm teaching net income, right? We're doing taxes, we're figuring out our paychecks, and I'm teaching that to class on Monday. Well, the class that's in there with me is getting the direct instruction, but the class that's in the offsite is doing some practice work on that. And then we flip the next day, and the group that wasn't with me is now with me getting the direct instruction. So there's a lot of things going on, but I think it's really doable. I think it has to be doable. And when I don't know how it looks for every teacher, but I know that for my own schedule, because Hinsdale is smaller, there are other classes that I have, everybody fits in my room. So I don't know how many classes, Ann, you could probably speak to that better than I can. I know it's some of the specials have more kids, but I think it's doable. We'll just split them up and make sure everybody has got something to do that they're learning.
Most of your classes won't need to be split, is that right?
I have just one quick follow-up comment. So from what I'm hearing with that, was like if you record yourself and they can watch it, you record yourself teaching, they can watch it. That's similar to what, I don't know how many teachers, I know the one that I live with would record a lot of himself doing lessons, put it up, the kids could watch it. It wasn't live Zooming, but he would record it. And so it sounds like it's stuff that some of the students are used to from remote learning before. Okay. Thank you, because that's very good, because I was really picturing it different in my head. So, yeah.
And Julie has a question.
Yes, I have a question because I'm reading it differently than
and you indicated maybe the teacher would record it for the student to watch later if they're at home. One of the best things I thought about both this remote and this hybrid plan was that the students were required to log in during the class time. So is that not the case? Is this something they can, I think one of our biggest issues in the spring was the lack of accountability. So I felt like when I read this plan, having the students who are not on site required to log in, take attendance, and participate in this class via online answered that accountability question. If we're now saying that the students are going to have access to recorded lessons, then we're once again taking the onus off of the students' accountability that I need you up at 8 o'clock, I need you logged into this class. And it's not like, if you feel like doing it at 11 o'clock at night, that's okay too, because that was our biggest issue with remote learning in the spring, I think. So are they going to be required to log in during class time and take attendance?
So to support this plan, we came up with the idea of a contract. And we thought, oh, that sounds so formal. Why don't we call it a personalized learning plan? And the parent and the student and the teacher would agree. These are the terms. Now, let's say I had a health condition and I couldn't log in every day. Maybe whatever it is, a heart trouble. I know I have some kids that I am worried about. But for the other kids, maybe that's one of the conditions in that personalized learning plan. I must log into class at 9:40. I must log into math at 11:20. So I think that we're gonna, if you support this and that's the direction we're gonna try, there would be like a personalized learning plan that parents, student, and teacher all agree on and they sign it. I think that would help with accountability. Yep, yep, yep.
If they were in school, they would be in math class, their expectation is that they will be watching that.
Teach, yep. And I think that would ensure new learning. A lot of the kids said, well, I didn't learn anything new. Well,
I think it's great as long as
yep.
that is the intent of, and they do have to log in and participate.
And if I can just comment also, Microsoft Teams will help us by facilitating the taking of attendance. It makes it easier for us. So if a kid is at home, they log in on Teams, they're good to go. We know that what time they logged in, we know what time they logged out.
Okay, so my question is for the hybrid. So they'll be in classrooms 5 days a week. Have we thought about what switching classes is going to look like?
So you're familiar with the bell schedule. I don't think we're gonna run by the bells, and I think the first few days, should we go with this, somewhat everybody here, we're gonna practice how we're moving in the hallways. And as Karen mentioned on the information we got today, if we have the 3 extra days, that would be a very important piece that we have to map out. Who moves when? How do they move? How many kids can go to the bathroom at the same time? Should they go to the bathroom? So right now, don't feed them anything all day and we'll be good. Seriously, I think those are details that we have to work out.
And I'll tell you what Jody said, if I could have that fixed. Jody said that using Office 365 Teams, you can see when they log in and when they log out. So there's accountability built in. Jody, correct me if I'm wrong. That's what you said, right?
Absolutely. You get timestamps.
It's time-stamped, okay? Yeah. Okay, so that is, those are the 3 options for the middle high school, and the team is recommended that modified access. Oh, sorry.
Hold on, Jim. Holly first.
Just one quick one. Just so if you're saying they log in, like they have math class at 8 o'clock, they log in, they're at home or a different location, whatever, and they're going to watch the teacher teach. So I understand you can do that in Teams, but the teachers are just going to have to figure out how to set up their classrooms, because I know some of them, their computers are not facing where they are standing there teaching, and they're going to have, you know what I mean? So yeah, so I just want to clarify that'll probably be something in those extra PD days when we're setting up, but and
this was all discussed with teachers during those weeks when they were working this out? Okay, so we still need teacher feedback or figuring out how to do it from the teachers. Okay, all right.
I don't know, yeah, I think a decision has to be made by the board
And
then
then
we have to
figure it out. Exactly. Yeah. No, that exactly. Yep. Thank you.
My only question was, if we thought that the ELO programs might be more or less suspended this year.
We can talk about this, Jim, if I'm yelling, if you can hear me, people, we talked about this, and Karen Thompson's very aware, and we actually just talked about this again the other day. Karen, can you talk about that? Are you online?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we just have rain, it's hard to hear.
Okay, so can you just repeat the question again? I couldn't quite hear.
Jim's wondering if we thought about suspending the ELO program. We're hoping not to suspend it, but Karen, we just talked about we need to map out more about ELOs.
Yeah, so we did talk about the safety protocols of our students when they are going in out to sites, and we're still developing a plan for that. But one of the things I know will happen is obviously our students will follow our safety protocols in and out of the building, but also will follow a double protocol for whatever the site protocol is when they are out at a site. I haven't touched base with all the places yet because I don't know what all the places are yet. I also know that some of our business and partnerships may not let students come this year, or at least for part of the year. So we're aware of that, and we're trying to work around that as best we can so we can still offer our students some sort of an ELO opportunity. I will tell you that most of the places that I've reached out to now have said yes, they would like a student back in some sort of either a full capacity or some sort of a hybrid model.
Hey, Karen, we're having a little trouble hearing you. Can I try to interpret for you?
Yes, indeed.
We don't want to suspend the ELO program. We don't know all the answers yet. We know we have to at least follow the guidelines that we've set up here, but we also have to follow the guidelines from the sites. We know that some sites may not be open to having our ELOs, so we're trying to get creative about different ELO opportunities, maybe even on site. I heard Karen say that. Karen, did I represent it well?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're hopeful, Jim. Okay?
Just to speak to the ELO piece, which is, by the way, such an incredibly fabulous program. My concern about that would be it is a challenge for us to maintain a safe environment for our students when they're under our control and under our purview here in our school district, in our physical space. I would be concerned sending them outside of our controlled area that we know that the protocols are being followed. I would be a little concerned taking the responsibility for that. I know my son, it was to do an internship this fall, and it's in the medical field. So, but all internships have been canceled. I feel like we might have some trouble with the sites wanting to take responsibility, but I do have to say I have a little concern in our loss of control on everything is being handled the way that we feel safe for our students when they're not with us. That would be my main issue with the ELO.
Did anyone else have anything for Karen for middle high school? Holly?
I hate to ask you another question. I'm sorry.
And
I will probably have more questions on August 5th again. But just sticking with the middle high school before we move off of it is, it notes that 15 to 20% of HMHS students may not return to the building, and it says in self-reporting. When was that self-reporting done? Like, was that part of this survey? So it's 15% of the survey responses or 15% of the students at the middle high school? Because that's very different.
That was from the task force, so I'm going to defer to Ann.
All right. Jody, do you recall where the 15 to 20% self-reporting came from?
I believe that came from both the surveys, and I think that when you guys were all talking to parents, that you felt that was reported the same thing there as well.
I mean, I've heard from maybe 10 parents, but that's definitely not 20%.
Okay, so this is like parents reaching out to you plus then the surveys.
Yeah.
So
Question three there.
on the survey, but that's still
That only represents.
143 responses.
Yeah.
Okay, because when I saw 15-20% and I did the math and I was like, oh my goodness, but if it's of 143
I mean,
responses,
it's about 25 kids, so that's a lot of kids.
that's why I was like, oh my gosh, but yeah, okay, that puts it in better perspective. All righty, that's it, thank you.
Anybody?
Okay, so yeah, and again, just so you know, I think we also talked about WRCC, Jim, as well. You know, that's another offsite. So those are things we're still trying to figure out. We don't have all the answers on that yet. We're well aware of the concerns. We had the same concerns Julia had. We have the same concerns. But we also know how important the program is. So, you know, we're trying to get creative. All right, so those are the three options for the middle high school. You heard the three options from the elementary school. And at this point, if it's okay, the next few pages are just a summary up to page 12 of the considerations that we took in, recommendations that the task force put forward, just a summary of them. All the details for each of these are at the back, and maybe not all the details, some of the details. Because there are a lot of other resources that I probably could have attached. I know that Tom O'Connor has since given me more resources about transportation after the fact it came in. You know, every day things are coming in. So we have more details. They just aren't here yet. And regarding communication, and you all know that this was a number one recommendation, number one piece of guidance that the state gave. We just think our message has to be clear and concise and consistent for all of the audiences out there. And so, we have a communications plan in place right now for emergency situations, and we have one person who's designated as that spokesperson who will ensure that this plan is carried out. We will prioritize how that message is delivered and shared. We'll make sure we communicate in ways that are not only just on School Messenger, but also through our website and through, although we know that's not the most popular way to receive mail information. But our goal is to keep parents informed as to how we're implementing our emergency, our plan for reopening, and also any changes that might occur along the way. It's just the way we have to communicate it is to be as consistent as possible, as clear as possible, and making sure we reach all the important stakeholder in the audience. So that would be not just staff and not just parents, community as well, students as well. And we also know that within each building, there needs to be a person who would relate, one key person, probably the principal, but I won't say that. It's whoever the principal designates to be the person who communicates with the key spokesperson in the central office. And then there would be also a special ed coordinator at each at the elementary school and the high school to address special ed questions. Again, all this has to be funneled through one person. So we met today, a bunch of us, just to make sure that we were talking about this topic of communication, and I think we're all on the same page. We did attend that webinar, Sean, that you had suggested. A lot of us, at least I did, because I knew this was an area I worked on. And I think we all felt we were about all in agreement on the same page. We feel like we have a good solid plan in place. We talked about the technology pieces of it. Debbie was present. So we know how important it is, and it's our recommendation that we work through this one person using the plan we have in place and making sure that the message is consistent, and that we also have a key person in each building. And also, of course, if it's a special ed question, the special ed coordinator would be the person in each building. So I don't know if you have any questions about that.
Questions on communication? You're going to talk more about communication.
Yeah.
Any questions, Karen?
No.
Okay.
Okay, and physical health protocols. I know you're going to have a lot of questions about this, and you might want to just turn immediately to the detail, which I have to see what page that's on. Pages 15 through 20. You can see how important that is. We have a lot of pages dedicated to physical health. And Elise, listen carefully, because this is you. We want to ensure the physical, emotional, and psychological safety for our students and staff. It has to be the priority that drives all of this for all reopening plans. So that if we do open on site, as is the recommendation, we know it has to be safe and it has to be clean. And we need to follow protocols that you all direct us to follow, that we're hopefully working on. So it means systematically considering the heightened risk facing students, including those with compromised immune systems, and how are we going to address them? How are we going to help those kids continue their learning? and the staff who support them. And in all cases, it needs to be reasonable and appropriate. And the recommendations are on pages, I think I just said, what page did I just say?
15.
15, thank you, Joe. Sidekick there. The details follow on pages 15 through 20. So this came from Elise and Jan. Elise Cody, our elementary nurse, and Jan Zalneritis, our middle high school. And at every meeting, they would report out and ask a lot of questions. And they were consulting with Joe, I think, and Sean about building, a lot of the building facility issues, because Joe and Sean worked on the building piece of it. So a lot of this came from a collaborative effort, and then had input at our meetings on every Monday and Wednesday. They met Tuesday and Thursdays. They sought the resources they needed, did some outside work, waited patiently for the guidelines from the Department of Health and Human Services. It took a long time to come forward. But when it did, they were able to supply to us all that you see here. And it's reflective, I think, of the guidance that we received from the Department of Health and Human Services and the CDC. So I don't want to sit here and read it to you, but whatever question, it's 5 pages.
Julia gets the first help question.
I have one major issue with page 15. I mean, I have read it, and I, again, cannot commend you all and the entire task force for the incredible amount of work and passion that you've put into creating this for us, and we thank you for that very much. I am very concerned about relying on parent screening. That is a major concern for me. I understand that parents have their children's best interests in mind, and I am not questioning that. However, if there is a parent who has a meeting or has something or has some sort of crisis they need to attend to, and I'm pretty sure, I feel like that is a liability, even a responsibility that perhaps we should not put on the parents. Because then if they don't see something, or they do see something, maybe then they're overreacting and they're not sending their child to school enough, or they miss something. I just feel like the onus of the screening needs to fall on the staff at the schools and the professionals. And that really jumped out at me, and when I read the health guidelines, that's my personal opinion.
Kayla?
So kind of bouncing off of that though, with small children, like you absolutely want to ask them, but if you ask a small child if they've had a runny nose or they're sneezing or coughing, they're going to say yes. Most small children aren't going to totally understand what they're being asked. So I think for the elementary school, having parents screening, and then with older children, I think we could screen too, but it's going to be almost impossible to screen kindergartners.
I agree with you 100%. I am 99% confident that 99% of the parents out there, if there's any question at all in their own mind, they won't send their child to school. That's where we hope that those decisions would be made at home.
Right.
However, I do feel like there needs to be another line of defense at the school to screen the students.
And I just want to say that was one of my big health questions. I have a couple, but that was that I noticed that the teachers will have to have their temperatures taken. The staff, the adults will have their temperatures taken, and they would have to report if they're sick or whatever, and not come in if they're sick. And like I know in my job, I'm back in the office, and by showing up to work as an adult, I certify I don't have any of these health issues or runny nose, cough, whatever. And I've taken my temperature, and I will admit there was at least one day that I was like, 3 o'clock came and I went, oh my God, I did not take my temperature this morning. So I'm a fully responsible adult. So I just think temperatures, even though they're symptoms, and if you're asymptomatic, it doesn't matter, you're not going to see it. But yeah, if staff is having their temperatures taken, all kids need to at least have their temperature taken. It just seems, it does make sense to me not to.
Because of my vacation, we are meeting tomorrow, the administrative assistants, the nurses, to develop this type of plan. where we will have access to the schools with different screenings. We have enough thermometers and PPE where everyone will have what we're planning is everyone having their temperature taken. We have to figure all that out, but that is in the plan.
Well, I think we need to ask Elise about that, because I think things change through all that. So Elise, could you comment about that, please?
Yeah, hi. So can you guys hear me okay? Good. So there's a lot of, we've had a lot of talk about this, and it's a pretty controversial topic. So what Jan and I kind of came to is that majority of children, especially young children, are asymptomatic. And then on top of asymptomatic, children have they have very mild symptoms if they have any at all. So most children will not show a fever. So screening for a fever, we thought kind of gives like a sense, like a false sense of security for the school, because most kids are not going to have a fever and they may have COVID. The other thing is we kind of want to put this on the parents. I know that somebody mentioned they don't want to put it on the parents, but I think if we have this responsibility on the parents, I think it's going to show them that they need to be, remind them, I should say, that they need to be screening their children, watching their children for sickness. If there's a runny nose in a child, we're going to hope that parent keeps that child home just in case, because maybe the next day they're going to be a little more sick. So we really want the parents to take some responsibility here with the health of their children. The worry is that parents aren't going to be involved and they're just going to be sending their kids to school. Oh, you're okay today. And then they're not going to be okay. And then that isolation room that we talked about is going to fill up. And then what are we going to do? Right? So there's a lot of other concerns there. Let's see, what else did I want to mention? We also talked about actually the process of screening. How would we do that? And how would we do it in an effective, efficient manner, especially if some children are taking the school bus. They've already been on the school bus. So then they've been around all these students when they come to school. I don't know. There was a, I can't think of much else to say right now, but there was a lot of a lot of discussion around this topic. I just did a seminar online with a lot of other school nurses around the country, and most of them are not screening at school and they're having families screen. I talked to Wayne about possibly getting thermometers for each family so that they have a tool at home. And then another thought is, oh, sorry, I just drew a blank.
Yeah. Elise, I think what I noticed sitting as a facilitator is that these recommendations became clearer when we got the guidelines from New Hampshire Health and Human Services.
Yeah, that's true.
And these are based on the guidelines from New Hampshire Health and Human Services, correct?
They are. So New Hampshire Health and Human Services doesn't believe that we should be, that we should only be screening possibly ill children, not all students.
Then why are we screening every staff member? I don't know. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that.
So they're not going to be able to hear if we don't do this ordinance.
I'm sorry, I should not have done that.
No, it's a question. You can certainly ask the question and there can be follow-up. I just want to make sure that we're not talking over each other, and because it's like I said, it's hard enough for everyone to hear, so we just want to make sure that they can. So
Controversial part of the packet.
I'm happy to turn.
No, I'm okay, because Kayla somewhat answered it. I'm so on the fence about this part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Caitlin, did you have anything on this?
Just that I think staff-wise, we absolutely should be screening because adults typically show symptoms more often, especially than children. So I think screening staff is important, and obviously staff, that should be assumed that if you're coming to work, you're okay. But temp checks for staff, I think, would be a lot more effective than with kids.
Can I just ask Elise to comment when you're done?
Yeah, let's let Jim ask you a question.
So, yeah, mine's just a follow-up. It seems like a lot of the
a lot of this responsibility is gonna fall on the shoulders of the nurses. So what happens if the nurses get sick and they're out for any length of time?
I don't have the answer.
I have an answer. Yeah, not a lot of answer of what we're gonna do.
This is not an answer of what we're going to do, but I want to address Jim's question. I today listened to part of, I'm going to finish it up tomorrow, a 3-hour committee meeting for joint committee meeting of New Hampshire Senate and the House Education Committees, and they had like tons of stakeholders. They had superintendents, they had school board members, nurses, you name it, transportation people. Everyone was on this call, this Zoom, and one of the schools, I can't remember who it was, said that they have nurses. It was one of the bigger districts, have nurses in every building, but they are having problems with getting, historically substitute nurses. So if they ever have a building that doesn't have a nurse one day, and I'm not saying this is us, I'm just saying this is what another district said. I want to make that super duper clear. Another district said this. They will shut the school down if they do not have a nurse that day. Just to let you know how some other district is handling it.
I mean, that same could be said for teachers.
And we do have 2 substitute nurses, just so everybody's aware also.
Elise, did you want to speak to anything else? I know that Jan couldn't be here, so Elise, I don't mean to put this all on you.
Yeah, that's okay. I think that I agree that there needs to be a screening process for adults. We currently have one. It's hard because we all come in at different times. We're kind of relying on a trust system, but I think everyone in the building wants to be safe, and they care about the children so much that they, want to keep the children safe. So I think the trust system is going to work. The other thing I want to talk about was Joe and I briefly talked about using a staffing agency. A nursing staffing agency. So if I were to be out, a registered nurse from a staffing agency, she wouldn't necessarily be a school nurse, but she would have nursing skills and she would know what to do. She'd be under a license. It would have to be a registered nurse, but we talked about that briefly. We haven't gone far into it.
Does anybody have anything else on this section?
Sorry. I have like 2 pages and I've already skipped a bunch of them that have been answered, but my only other question health-wise, and I doubt that you have an answer for it, but so we're talking about people calling in sick and whatever. So staff member calls in sick. How are they using their sick days? Are they getting, because I know in my job, we get 80 hours under the CARES Act to cover COVID related, whatever. That's part of the CARES Act. Governor Sununu had said on WMUR last week, because right after he gave his wonderful press conference, he met with WMUR and answered questions at 5:30. And one of the questions was, how are teachers' staff going to get paid? Like Paris, quarantining for 14 days is going to wipe out maybe all of their time for the year. So he had said, oh, well, they'll have to use their sick days, which is that not covered under the CARES Act? I don't know if that's a Dan Diorio question with HR, but I know it is for my job. For 80 hours at least is covered under the CARES Act. So I know that's a big concern with people out there, is that, it could wipe all their sick days out in one quarantine if they had to. So
If they're sick,
yeah, like if a teacher, someone in their family is diagnosed and they have to, or a child sick, a student, and the teacher has to, and however many kids around them have to quarantine, how are they covering that?
Exactly. Yeah. For like the school district as opposed to yours.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why, I wasn't sure. It doesn't seem fair, but
Yeah.
Okay.
Just real quick, because it's in the question, but I think it was answered earlier that Sean made, you're going to work on the wayfinding. I think that's a huge piece. The wayfinding is the arrows and the 6 feet and controlling the flow of traffic. Okay, excellent. Perfect. And I can certainly help with that. My company has spent months and months researching all this, helping offices get back to work. So maybe if I can assist in that in any way, how to help with wayfinding and what works and what doesn't work, that would be great. But that's a critical piece as well, because we can give every kid 50 square feet and then have them rubbing elbows, so.
Maybe we have it set up now, we have two-way traffic, set up the same way, like our standard road.
Right.
Always on the right.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like too close. These always are.
Perfect. Yeah, they're yeah.
And we do one directional.
Great. Great, because that's an important piece. And I know we talked about working on that the 3 days to get back to school. How are we going to get from where to there? But that really has to be an important piece of it, because when kids are moving, staff is moving, we can have the best plan in the world for when they're sitting in the classroom, but we need to get them to and from there safely. And it takes a long time to plan that out. It's not an easy answer.
Sean, what was the last part of what you said?
What part?
The upstairs and downstairs, I think is what it was.
We have one directional stairs, like we have, say, for instance, elementary school, we have two sets of stairs. One will be up, one stair will be down. So it's just one direction.
Like they do in much bigger schools. Okay, yeah.
On the health day. Going back to what Elise said earlier, thank you again for being here and sharing your thoughts. You've obviously done a lot of research. That's wonderful. I can understand where at the elementary school level it's difficult to screen because of the nature of the symptoms and that they're asymptomatic. I also appreciate your attitude that, the general attitude that we want the parents to take some responsibility and some ownership of their child's health. I think all of us in this room are here because that is our hope and dream, that all students are cared for in that way by their parents. However, that's not reality. So I think that the elementary is a bit of a challenge because of the way their symptoms present, and that it would be difficult to ask them the appropriate leading questions. I do, however, feel strongly at the middle high school level. We're finding more research every day. The most contagious age group right now is between 10 and 19. Those kids are showing symptoms as they get a little bit older. And I think at least at the older level, we need to have a plan for screening these kids.
Any other health questions?
All right, just because it goes with health, and we should talk about it. I know because Brattleboro did last night, or WSESU did last night in their meeting, and I know what they decided. But Vermont's very different. They've gotten a lot of clear guidance from their governor, which we have not. So while we're in the health question, I'm just going to ask it because it needs to be at least brought up tonight. Face coverings. So I know, I think it goes back and forth. I know the governor has not yet mandated. It seems like he's going that way, especially now since the president is advocating for it. I think it might go that way by the time we open up. So face coverings, are we gonna say mandatory for whom? Everybody? Not? I know it says the guidance says when you're sitting down 3 feet from somebody, or whatever it is, 3 feet we do. You don't have to wear them.
Okay, yeah, we did put that in there. We went around a lot about that.
Did we land on something? That's why I said.
Yeah, we did.
Adults, the staff will be shall wear, that means they're required to wear face coverings, masks. And if they need accommodations, they would ask for that very simply. And, some people have the breathing issues and may need to wear a shield, but we are requiring masks because there's research to support masks are safer. But that doesn't mean that for 100%, there may be a person here or there that has a legitimate reason why, and they would see Ann and state that, and then they would have an accommodation and be able to wear a shield. The students should be wearing masks. There are, if Julie is on the line and if she can speak to this, we do have a lot of kids, and she advocated for this, who have sensory issues, who have health issues and they just can't wear the masks. And so we say should, and we're going to hope and encourage and generally state that we want kids to wear masks, but there are some extenuating circumstances for students. So Julie, are you on the line, and did you want to speak to that? Or maybe
yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So there are a lot of kids that have sensory issues. We all know masks are difficult to wear for 6.5 hours a day. And these are the kids that I work with who have an identified disability to begin with. And we will be looking at each and every one of them carefully. Some of it is training. You know, some kids will not want to wear it, but if they get used to it, take a little time, get used to it, they'll be able to tolerate it and maybe switch between a shield and a mask at times. But sensory issues don't go away with age. So we may be looking at a senior with a sensory issue. And I just want to be sure that that's recognized by everyone. I know that older kids are not going to want to be singled out or be the one who isn't wearing the face covering. So it will be discreet, but we have to look at each and every one of these kiddos with disabilities.
And even without, Julie, some of the kids won't be identified.
Some without, yes, yep.
Okay, so does that answer your question, Holly?
Yeah, the recommendation should, but we ultimately decide that lack of everything in here.
Yeah.
Think about it.
This is our recommendation to you,
Yeah.
is that adults shall and students should.
And unless adults have a.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
I just wanted to make sure clear that there will be times if a teacher is, especially in primary level, kind of giving direct instruction, might be on where to position your tongue in when you're saying a certain sound. There will be times when they'll only have a face shield on, but once those instruction times are done, then the expectation is they go back to a cloth face covering.
Yeah.
Yeah, I brought that up in our meeting like 2 meetings ago, and I was discussing to reach out to Julie when the parent asked about it, and I did, and Julie said that we had ordered some of those. So, yeah. No.
Okay, we're moving on then to the school environment preparation and maintenance. And thank you to Sean Lee and Joe for all their work on this. And I know they involved Elise and Jan to a degree, and maybe others that I'm unaware of, but we want to make sure we maintain a healthy environment for learning. And it's going to take a team approach. So it's not going to be just relying just on our custodians, and we're going to be relying on each staff member to contribute to keeping the spaces clean. And the custodial staff will be working more on the common areas. There is an expectation that the commonly used areas will be cleaned twice per day by custodial staff. And if you want to see the details, they start on page 21 and go up to page 23. So they've taken the 3 types or options: hybrid, full access, and remote. And obviously remote isn't, I think, the piece we're looking at right here, because in that case, the kids are at home. But full access is the same as hybrid, and you can see who has responsibility for what. And you can see what we've done about air circulation and ventilation. We've upgraded our, I don't know what they're called. Sean, what are those things called that you upgraded?
Basically, it's just to affect air filter with certain ratings on it. Basically, just less particulates get through them as their MERV rating goes up. So currently, the standard has been 8, MERV 8. We're loosening it up to MERV 11. So all it scrubs more.
Thank you, Sean. You can see we've taken action on water fountains, closing them. Most of the water fountains will be turned off. There's one with a bottle dispensing station. That will be an exception. And so on, meal delivery is outlined here, and physical distancing, and floors will be marked off so students know how far. There's a factor about classroom setup and storage and other PPE. So if you have questions about any of those areas, Joe and Sean are both here, and I would let them answer those questions because this is not my area of expertise. I'm very thankful for them.
And Ann helped a lot too.
And I apologize. I'm so sorry.
Holly? Then Kayla.
Sorry, Ann.
It's more of a comment. I just would like to say, I had no idea what that MERV meant. And when I was listening to that, committee meeting today, one of the larger districts, was talking about how, their MERV was like at 7 or something, and they wanted to upgrade, but, because they're a larger district, they're having trouble and, affording it, whatever, and this and that. So I was glad to see that what they're talking about that they wanted, we actually have. So thank you, Sean. And I thought that was great. I'm like, oh, good. You're on the right track there. So thank you. That's just my comment.
So somewhere in this packet, I saw no lockers. I can't find it again, but I have it written down. Okay, 22. So I was wondering, how is that going to work with everyone's gear then needing to be in the classroom, I'm assuming? So I just wanted clarification. Yeah, I thought it was for the elementary school, but is it the high school? Okay, so it's the high school.
All right, so who wants to address the no lockers?
I know, I was gonna say.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't.
I forgot because I was thinking.
Thank you. So as Sean said, our hallways are pretty wide and we can have traffic in 2 directions. But if kids are stopping at their lockers and they're elbow to elbow, it's not going to work. We're going to defeat everything we've done. So last year there was questions about, can kids bring their backpack into the classroom? Yes, but it has to be away from where they sit. They put it in a, predestined place. The teachers determine where they can put their things. But we really don't want kids stopping in the hallway, elbow to elbow at their lockers. So that should help with passing a lot. A lot of things happen when kids are jammed up in the hallway.
What about the elementary school?
So this is the consensus of the committee. And we'll make it work. I think we have a different situation at the elementary school and that we have a lot more control over passing. And what we were originally thinking was you'd have 2 cohorts of groups of kids because we're all in the same room. So students 1 and 12 are at their locker, or 1 and 7 are at their locker, and you've got basically 6 feet between them. And then 2 and 8 could be at their locker. So if we can't work it out with no lockers, then we can always use social distancing in the hallways by controlling when they're at their lockers better.
So they have lockers in the hallway?
They do.
Thank you.
Anything else? Holly?
And this came up when I was watching that replay of that committee meeting today. So and I apologize if it's in the packet and I missed it or whatnot. But so for the facilities, anything needed that we have to do for facilities? I know a lot of other districts, and these are mostly bigger districts, who their care funds didn't go nearly as far. But the cost for any kind of these facility upgrades or anything, the PPE, the whatever that we need, is that, have we looked, like, are we going to get some kind of report on that? Because I'm the rep to the budget committee, so I would like to know, like, is it all covered in CARES? Were we able to do, that might be more of you, Wayne, but were we able to do this stuff mostly with CARES money?
So I would ask.
Ooh, a new location.
Sean, this might be an opportunity for your $14,000 question as well.
So we so far are assuming that we were already within our CARES budget. So we plan to do anything that is a COVID-related expense using COVID funds in the state. We've been told, and most recently today, that there's another fund source of COVID money coming to schools out of the Congress authorization of the second round. So I anticipate that we are going to be able to do everything we've talked about tonight. And one other thing that I'd like Sean to speak to, because we'd like we might not be able to get it if we don't get it now. But we're looking toward the next round of COVID funds in order to buy it, which isn't here yet. Sean, could you speak to that, please?
Yeah, we're looking at putting positive, negative ion generators inside of our air. They've been proven to kill 90% of all COVID and flus and everything else. So on top of our MERV 11 filters, we would also not stagnating the air, we're killing any virus, bacteria, mold inside the ductwork before it gets to our health. But there is a cost to it. You know what I mean? It's either we use UV lights, which are frankly they're a lot more expensive than what these ion machines do. And it's actually pretty quick install. So I think our labor cost to get them installed is going to be far cheaper because we don't have to run 120 power, 120 volts of power up to these units. You can actually take some of the power that's already after you. They range from 24 volts to 240.
So I think we're talking about 14,000 roughly, Sean?
Yeah, 14,000 for the units that we need.
Yep.
And then whatever the labor cost would be to install it.
So that's, even though I have the authority in the summer to spend that money, we have it, we could find it if we had to. I'd like, if it's okay with the board, we'll just move on that, because if we don't move now, by the time we get to our next board meeting, we probably won't get it before school starts. It would be good, even if COVID goes away in a month, it would still be a value to the district. That's my opinion.
I agree that it's certainly a worthy thing to look at our ventilation system and ways to improve that, not only for COVID, but for other things as well. However, before we all just say yes and shake, $14,000, another $14,000, one of my big questions coming into tonight's meeting was, out of that CARES money, how much has been spent? What is left? How's it been allocated? Because I know I spoke pretty vocally at the last meeting that we needed to hold on to some of that CARES money if at all possible, because we don't know what's going to happen in the fall if other expenses are going to come up. We also are talking about having some more money coming to the schools in this next round of federal relief, which is a very cantankerous and not at all assured funding right now in our current political climate. So I think it's a wonderful idea. I think before I personally can approve a $14,000 expenditure, or give it my blessing, I understand we've already given you the right to do so. I think I'd like to know a little bit about the CARES money, how much has been spent already. I know there's been a lot of money spent in preparing for these scenarios before a scenario was chosen due to demand and having to place orders. But I'm feeling a little bit like I personally would like to know how we're doing with that CARES money. Did it get us where we needed to be? Are we going to have any surplus for the fall? Will this money, I'm guessing not, because we're talking about needing to spend this $14,000 out of another fund besides CARES. So that to me is saying, and I could be wrong, that there isn't $14,000 in the CARES fund anymore, but I would just like clarification on that.
I would like Tom to respond, but in my understanding, we did have the 14,000 current, 88,000 here, but I don't know where the booking is. That is my understanding, based on the preliminary budget that we made about a month ago.
So, hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay? All right, let's see. Is that any better? How about now? Let me turn off my AC. Maybe that will help. All right, are we loud enough now? Okay, so I don't have any update from what Wayne just reported as far as the early on plan goes. There are a lot of moving parts to answering that question, and I really can't give you a definitive one right now. We have committed to purchase 116 laptops at the 37,000 that the board previously voted. We have committed to paying for some committee work over the summertime in COVID-related planning, and we have committed to certain other expenditures, or actually made certain other expenditures, which are not currently reported as CARES money. But we have put an asterisk next to those numbers, and we're tracking it off system as far as any expenditures related to dealing with the pandemic. So there are multiple places where these numbers are being tracked. Erica has put together a spreadsheet and shared that with us, and we've instructed everyone who is doing something that can be considered COVID related to report that information to her to be tracked in the spreadsheet. It cannot be reported on our accounting system at this point, nor can it be sent to the state for reimbursement under the CARES money at this point, because the grant itself, although we have an allocation of $188,000 at present and the potential for a second round of additional money, that grant allocation, the plan for the budget for that has not been formulated yet. I looked at it today on the state system, and it appears that we've input some information. We've started the process of creating that grant budget, but we're only up to about $37,000. So I know that there's more input to go before it can be submitted to the state for their approval of our plan. And after their approval, we can begin a drawdown of the money. So meanwhile, we're tracking things off system, as I said, through this Erica spreadsheet and through everyone involved in anything connected to spending on the COVID area, of submitting those expenditures in a way that we can ultimately then move them out of where they presently accounted for and into the CARES money.
So we don't know exactly where we're at.
We have 188,000 allocation. I've just started to work with Pat on writing the grant. I'm pretty much done. This is tonight. But I'm coming to help with her a little bit, and she's working real hard on that. We have allocated the funds for, Wayne has talked to you about this with regard to paying people for their work for this summer. For special ed compensatory education, I don't think that was mentioned. That's about $40,000. And then the special education compensatory education, we have not been given any leeway. We have to make sure we have all the meetings, so we have to pay for that. We have to pay for some related service providers to do some work with special ed students. We have to pay for that. And I'll let Julie talk to that in a second. The third major expense is $37,500 for the laptops for grades 2, 3, and 4. So I think that comes up to about $120,000 or $30,000 of the 188. And that leftover money that you talked about needing to hold, that's where I think he's talking about we might have the $14,000. So Julie, did you want to talk about special ed at all?
Yes, I do. Special ed has expenses in the summer as far as the ESY. We had to talk to all of the parents, meet with everybody, and we had to up our ESY a little bit.
Extended.
Sorry?
That's COVID related, or do we have that everywhere?
No, that is COVID related because of lagging skills that were lost from March till June. We also have to meet with every parent at the, at the very beginning of school, and we have to identify gaps in their learning and offer compensatory ed to bring that, to close that gap as best we can. This will involve evaluations, and a lot of evaluations very, very quickly. So that is going to cost more money than regular evaluations that are going to be ongoing anyway, that will be spread across the entire school year. With compensatory ed, if we need to, we may have to transport kids home if we ask them to stay for an extra hour. My idea was, if we had gaps to close and the team agreed, the IEP team agreed, then we could have compensatory ed an hour after school, Monday through Thursday. This would be a stipended position that would be voluntary, that staff would apply for. We'd have to pay that, and we would also have to get the kids home, which would be transportation costs.
So if you didn't hear, she said their transportation costs, if we have to keep kids after school to provide services that we must be required to fill the gap for these kids. So there are a lot of extra costs related to that, to the gap that's widened with all this time out of school.
And I apologize if you have to repeat something, but I'm just confused. When Julia asked if ESY is COVID related, or if we have it every year, we do have ESY, extended school year. I mean, it's every summer. So and then, like I said, maybe I misunderstood some of the answer, but I'm just confused now, I guess.
Okay, so the commissioner, the special ed commissioner, asked that we meet with every parent, get in touch with every parent and talk about ESY. There are some kids who come, and there are some kids who don't require extended school year. So we had more kids in ESY this year than we normally have because of COVID. And some of it's being done remotely, some of it's being done in person. But that is, additional staffing costs. It's not a lot. Most of the money would be in evaluations, staff stipends for compensatory ed, and transportation.
Okay. No, not all.
What I think she said, Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, is that we have more kids this year. We were required to meet with every single one of these special ed students. There were more meetings, paying people coming to these meetings as far as staffing, because it's in the summer. And through that, more students were identified than typical as needing special ed extended school year, probably due to the gap. So we have more kids we're servicing, and we have to transport these kids, and we may well have to transport them after school if they are going to receive more instruction after school in the fall. So this is not only in the summer, it's at more kids, but it could extend to the fall. Did I represent that?
Yes, that's correct. And the evaluation to identify the gaps is going to be an expense as well.
Yeah, having the evaluations costs money as well.
So we always have ESY, but typically it is students in the life skills program only. But this year we have other kids with identified needs that have decided they want to join it. So it's a broad spectrum of kids with needs. Yep.
Thank you.
Sean's request. So you can do a couple different things. We can say, yes, go ahead and make it contingent on, the second wave of care funds. We can say, we have 40-ish or whatever it is, $1,000 left, and say, go ahead. We can say, no, we want to have a, more complete breakdown before continuing the conversation. So we have a couple of different options. How do you all want to proceed? Holly?
Your suggestion of getting a breakdown before we decide. we're gonna meet again on the 5th to finalize this possibly. Yeah. Yeah. I absolutely agree. So I like personally your thought of getting a breakdown, a more detailed breakdown of where we stand with the CARES money before we decide, and say if we even meet, like you said before, the 5th, that would be next week. I hope it would still give them time to get what they need if we get a breakdown and we decide. Okay.
I would agree with that. I think I'd like a little bit more information. I mean, ideally, if we could do everything we wanted, that would be fantastic. If we had unlimited funds, but I hear from Julie, from Julie's perspective, and from what I'm hearing from Karen and Julie saying that, and right now we've got this $40,000 that we've allocated. But we don't know what's going to happen with all these evaluations and what these needs might end up being for the special education and what the requirements are due to the lack of the gap that we had in March to June. What if it's not 40,000? What if it's 50? What if it's 60? So I feel like our emphasis, and we should put, I'm a big rainy day fund person. I feel like we should have what we need to service those students and rely on our other safety measures, at least for now, with the MERV 11, which is great, and the mask wearings and the recommendations. I'm afraid that if we spend this $14,000 and then we find that we have students that have needs that we cannot afford because we've spent this CARES money on environment instead of education.
Okay, so once again, I would tend to disagree with Julie on this because during the course of the last month and watching all these reports and reading these reports and listening to things on TV, the three things that come up the most in terms of school reopening is distance, hygiene, and proper ventilation. And it seems to me that this addresses proper ventilation definitely, and possibly some even the hygiene. So I think that switching towards a preventive maintenance approach, and I assume this is in both buildings, that this is actually a priority item and will help eliminate a lot of the issues we might face if we don't do it. So I would advocate actually for pursuing it right now.
I tend to agree with Jim. I would personally feel better about voting to have people back in school, knowing we have this additional precaution that, I don't know, this just seems like a much better option than expecting young children to stay 6 feet apart. Obviously, they still need to do that, and that's still important, and masks are still important. But I think, especially with our younger population, it's just another buffer, and I would feel safer putting people back in buildings.
So my question for Wayne and or Tom, would we be able to have the breakdown that we're talking about within the next week, 2 weeks? What kind of time frame would you need to put that together?
Just because you have an expense doesn't mean that you have the paperwork also to
Yeah.
So Tom would be better. I couldn't answer.
All right, so is Tom still here? Tom, do you have an idea of how long it would take to figure that out?
I'm still here. I can't estimate for you at this point because it's not really up to me. I'm looking at Erica's spreadsheet right now. There's only been $6,000 booked into supply accounts that were looking at for using the CARES money. And then the $37,468 for the laptops. We have a couple of pages in this workbook for special ed, but nothing's been entered. And for professional development, nothing's been entered. I also just jumped on to the states. Any better? I'm shouting. Hello?
Well, so did anyone hear?
Tom, correct me if I'm wrong. I think you said we can't really estimate, but that you have the 37,500 already allocated and in the grant that's been written so far for the laptops for the grades 2, 3, and 4, and that there's some various expenses that are on the spreadsheet. I think you said something about $6,000 for
Yeah,
supplies.
there's roughly $6,000 in supplies.
6,000
of
in
various
supplies.
sorts.
And then I know she hasn't put the budget together, but we have requested that 50,000 put aside for these paying people for the work that needs to be done. 50,000 hasn't happened, and we may not need it all, but that's what we're asking for. If people come to this training that we're offering in the summer, and that you'll hear about it when we get to PD, and we need to pay people to come if they're going to do that, and we have to pay the facilitators. So that's 50, and then the 40 for special ed. So that comes out to about 140.
So in my grant experience is somewhat limited. It's more focused on the money end of it, as opposed to the grant rules and writing end of it. But I was on a seminar, webinar about this particular grant, and I know there was lengthy discussions about set aside for equitable services. So when you folks who are working on the grant system get to that stage of development of the budget, I know that we don't have any private schools within the Hinsdale School District, but I don't know whether we're required under the grant rules for this particular grant to come up with a number to set aside out of the 188. And so there's some technical things, and those are the types of things that prevent me from giving a definitive answer at this point or reporting on specific of expenditures and whatnot. So I guess I defer to Karen's judgment as to when this might be done and when we might be able to provide a more detailed information report to the school board.
Okay, I can just say, Tom, that I know Kat McLaughlin is working on this. She's online. It's a learning curve. And we, I think she's doing fine and think it'll come together, but it won't be the whole 188 because we don't have that allocated yet. So it'll be probably what we've talked about. And I'm hearing Tom, when I hear him, I think he's saying there's some technical things that we might have to put some allocations aside for services to kids for gaps. So that's news to me. I didn't know that. So
well, it's equitable services, and it has
equitable
to do
services.
with the.
Yeah. We always have to do that though, Tom, on all these title grants, right?
Well, we do on Title I. There's a set aside for homeless, etc.
Yeah.
On this particular one, there's a set aside for charter schools and private schools in your district.
But we don't have that.
I know we don't have any, but I don't know if they're going to allow us to use up the full 188, or if we have to come up with some crazy calculation that says we can only use 160 of it, let's say.
Yeah. Well, when we do Title I, and any of the title grants, and we have to prove that we don't have a special, I had to do this in my other job too, is that we just have to get sign-offs, but we don't have a private school here, so I don't think we have to worry about the private school, but I don't know, and Tom, I defer to you, you know this stuff better. So I think he's being cautious, and I think it's wise to be cautious.
So my question was not a breakdown at this point. My question was when, what would be the time frame if we wanted to have something put together? When, and I'm asking for a specific question, for a specific reason. When could we put something like that together?
Oh,
would it be a week, would it be 2 weeks, or is that something that's so fluid, which it sounds like maybe that's the case, that, we can't have that, ready anytime soon? Because if we can't, if we know that we can have it ready in a week or 2 weeks or whatever, my question to Sean would be, how long does it take, once we order that, should we go with it to get that in? Is that time sensitive? Or is it something that we can, sit and put this together in a certain time frame and then get that? Does that make sense?
I hear you, but I don't know that, I'm hearing Tom say that we can't give you a definitive response right now.
All right. So, yeah.
So I would like some clarification. So it kind of sounds like we can't have a rainy day fund with this money. Like we have to show what we're spending money on, and that's what we get. So it's not like we get 108,000 and then we spend it. We have to show what is being spent, and that's the amount we get.
No. I don't have to think that I'll speak up. We can budget, and I talked to Tom about this. We have 188,000. Right now, we've only committed in our heads about 130,000. We can write that, and we can send it in. And then we know we still have 50,000 left or 58,000 left that we can budget when we know what it is. And we just have to ask it to be returned and do it. So we try to write everything we know we want to commit right now. But we know we're allocated 188,000. So I understand his caution, and he is a great business administrator. He knows what he's doing, and I appreciate that. So I think we need to listen to him, But we are given that money, 188,000.
So we can resubmit things.
Yes, and we can even change it along the way. We can ask it to be sent back, and we can make changes.
All right, so we kind of don't have the option, to get that breakdown that we were talking about. All right, so that leaves us with our other options, if you guys want to move forward on that. And that's something that you guys have to decide, when you can still say, you can specify with second round of care funds, you can do all, you can decide, how, if, when it's, but I need to hear from you guys what you guys want to do. Julia?
Sean, you mentioned the $14,000 price tag, but that does not include installation. Do you have any idea what that might be? I mean, I know in some of these projects, the installation labor is as much as the product.
I can't see that being expensive. I'll say probably somewhere around 2,000 to 3,000 for both schools. Don't quote me yet, because I gotta get a quote. I'm just roughly guesstimating.
Right. So, okay. So it is a guesstimate. So we don't have an official quote of what we truly would be expending.
On the unit.
On the
I
unit.
don't have it on the labor yet.
Right.
I just got my unit numbers yesterday.
Perfect.
So.
Perfect. I personally would be more comfortable approving it once we had that information, because I don't know what's involved. But again, I truly understand that the importance of it and the value of it, especially with the younger kids, although it's another layer. Kayla, to speak to what you were saying, the kids, we can't keep them, they're not going to be great at social physical distancing, and they're not. But the unit is going to prevent them from, germing all over each other. But I would love to absolutely sit here and say, I think we should spend every penny we can on every precaution that we can. And if the funds were unlimited, that would be my recommendation. But I think we need to have all the information before we can make an educated decision.
Holly, do you have something to add?
Yeah, so if we don't vote on this tonight and if we meet like next week or the 5th, would that, and I'm sorry if if you did ask this, I'm getting a little, kind of mixed up.
That's my next question.
Oh.
If you could have a firm quote ready by then?
Yeah, or if with us waiting, like, because you were saying you wanted to get this in to make sure you get it and all that. Is this gonna, tie up too much or impede you getting this all taken care of if we wait till next week or the week after?
No. No, obviously we're starting school in
Or we are,
So-
give or take.
I mean, they can be sold afterwards too, it's just a preventative thing, so. I can get you a quote here in the next couple of days for what that labor cost is gonna be. I'll get a couple of different sources, if that makes it happen, get you a couple different labor costs, so.
If you could get us a quote, that would be very helpful.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I gotta break the tie.
I don't know, I'm vacillating, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Well, and even I would like to know what the installation process is gonna be first. I don't wanna go on, like, no, I would like to.
Well, I think it's responsible to get the quote, and if Sean can do that, said in a few days, I think that's a responsible way to do it. And I think that's a good way. We'll get that, and we can proceed from there. Does that work for you? All right, awesome.
Social emotional wellness for all, if we're ready to move away from facilities.
All right. Is everyone ready to go? Katie, I'm sorry, I totally forgot.
Okay, so this might not really be facilities, this might be more scheduling, I don't know. But for recess, I saw it was going to be organized and structured recess. And I'm probably asking yet again another question that can't really be answered yet, but I would just like a little bit of insight about what we're thinking that might look like.
So we evaluated the idea of using the playground, and there's just so many surfaces to take care of that we just don't have the manpower to do that. So the playground's going to be off limits, but we have enough open space throughout the fields that we could separate the groups. Personnel is going to be the other kind of issue because everybody's going to be going in a number of different directions with added help of cleaning up. So recess may look somewhat different in that, we might say that they're going to play shadow tag in this space. In this space, they may be doing more physical exercise, like jumping jacks and, push-ups and that kind of thing, sit-ups if they can bring up mats or something. So just having more supervision around what they do so they have a better opportunity to physically distance. But there's a lot of variables still at play in trying to figure out the personnel and supports. But it would be just not let them go out and just run around. Like sometimes it's just great for kids to just run around, just do whatever they want. They're not going to be able to be as creative. You're going to need to have some guidelines, and we might rotate it daily that you're doing this certain station, and then the next day you're doing it, or it might be too confusing. We might do it weekly. We haven't ironed out those things, but it would be just more direct. Here's what we're going to play over here today.
Are we ready to move on to SEL?
Okay, thank you. We called that organized play when I was a principal, and it was a great thing. A lot of our kids are looking for direction and they don't know how to play, so it's a great idea actually. All right, social emotional wellness for all. We really, we can't stress how important we feel this is for all. We feel strongly that it melds well the time-wise with our affiliation with Eric Mann, Eric Mann from Ceres, who's starting to work with a leadership team in each school on developing protocols that would be similar district-wide around behaviors and social emotional well-being, a multi-tiered approach. So that's just beginning, but it really connects well when we start thinking about practices that we want to be sending the common message to all of our kids from all of us, some adults. But on top of that, that's for students and staff. But we also want to connect with our families. So this committee, which was a nice group of folks, including Laura Kelsey and Lindsay Blake and Karen Thompson, and I forget who else, but I'll look it up in a minute and tell you. They worked very hard. And I started actually with the staff. I think there's a lot of people worried about the anxiety our staff are feeling right now, and spent a lot of time about, we're worried about our kids, but our staff need training on how to do this. So There's a lot of time spent around how to make our staff understand that they're cared about just as much as we think we need to care about our kids, we need to care about each other. And we talked about ways to do that. We also talked ways to reach out to our families to assure that they are getting what they need. And a big part of this that's consistent across the board was an advisory. So we're going to need training in advisory, and we have some of that set up already. I know they met today, and implementing an advisory system. So SEL is super important. We don't want kids to come in the first day and just be hit with academics. They need to reconnect not only with each other, but with their prior year's teachers. They just need to understand what it's like to be back in school, and they need to feel safe and secure. So we need to get an assessment of them. So that's part of it as well, to kind of assess their social emotional well-being. And we need the same for each other. So with that said, I'd like to turn it over to, I guess, Karen. I'll pass it to you, and certainly pass it on to Lindsay or Laura or anyone else that's on board. And I'll look up who's on that committee in a minute here. I can't remember. Maybe you could tell me, Karen.
Yeah, Marian O'Malley was on the committee, Tim Fleming, and Sarah Donahue.
Thank you.
So Karen summed it up pretty well. I do think that we wanted to take into consideration all three entities. And we're hearing at the end of last year, at the end of the school year in June, that there was some angst. We feel like people had some time to go home, rest a little bit, but now the angst has risen again as the time gets closer, and we know that there are some spikes happening. So staff input was really important to us. Obviously, we feel like our kids are at the center of it all, but in order for us to help our students regulate, we have to have a staff that's regulated also, and we feel like you got to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you can help others. So we recommended some ways that we might be able to help each other. We're a small enough district. We felt strongly that we could implement ways that we could lean on each other through an advisory system for our kids, but as well as helping each other out through this. You'll see some of the recommendations that we thought would be nice that we would hope that we could implement for our staff. But most importantly was that all staff in the district got all the same training. So if we were implementing an advisory system, that we allowed everybody to be part of that training. And although we know that not everybody can be an advisor in an advisory system, certainly all of us can use the same language and the same words. So we thought that would be important. We really felt strongly that one of our recommendations would be that we really feel like the first week or more, whatever the board decides, not be directly, the emphasis not be directly on academics, but more on reentry. What will the requirements look like? What will be the expectations? And let our students re-enter a world that they haven't been in a long time. We also knew that we were hearing from our students. We knew that a lot of students had sort of dropped off, and we hadn't heard from a lot of them. So we wanted to make sure that through the advisory system, we have ways to connect with families and with students on a regular basis. We feel like if we can implement an advisory system, and it might look different at the elementary school versus the middle high school, but that if we can implement that with fidelity, that we could, this could be something that could be part of a school redesign. I want to remind everybody this is the redesign, also the time for us, so that whatever we implement would be done with fidelity, and that we give everybody training that we can build on, and we can keep growing. We can keep using this as a point for everybody, and that every student in the district would have one person that their family and themselves know that they can reach out to through, whether it be remote, whether it be hybrid, whether it be all in, and further on. So, and also overlapping and sort of doing an overlay of what Eric Mann's work is, using some of his work to start our school year off with a screening tool for our students as well as our staff. So that's what I think it's important also that we spoke a lot about the importance of using Marianne and her work with HASP, as she's often the first point of contact for our students in the morning when they first arrive every day. So allowing her people to get training also around advisory or whatever it is that we or you as the board decide you'd like us to implement.
Thank you, Karen. And for you all on pages 24, 25, there is further detail related to social emotional learning. So the summary's on page 10, but on 24, 25, we get into a little more detail there. So if you ever want to dig in, there's some examples, I think. And it does mention the piece about HASP, I'm pretty sure, yeah. Recommend that all staff from HASP be provided with the same PD opportunities. We want to include HASP in as much training as possible. Speaking about PD, we're not in PD now, but it is important that these kinds of things we're talking about do require PD. And we would say that, we would suggest, recommend that those 3 days that the governor, the governor and the commissioner said that we could have without the students, that we make sure that that all staff are at those trainings, not just the teachers on a teacher contract, because we need a common message to be the same for everybody. That's our recommendation. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Anyone have any questions in this area?
Maybe we're getting fantastic.
I think it's an exceptional. Really, no question.
It is very non-controversial.
It's very well done and complete, and actually, in essence, in a lot of ways, what we've been asking for a while. So it's fantastic.
Good job, team.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Moving on to transportation and meals. That was one subcommittee of a variety of people, including Ann and Julie, Joe, Wayne, and Tom O'Connor, and I think maybe others were called in from First Student and from Abbey Group. So we've outlined for you on page, whatever page this is, I don't see the number here, maybe 11. Thank you. Somehow the page number is not, it must have pulled down. When I pulled down the meal, I pulled out the text box and it went over. All right, so anyway, regarding this, they met bi-weekly starting in mid-June, and they are still continuing to meet. They give you some details here, and I would turn it over to Wayne or Joe and Ann to speak about this, or Julie online, or Tom. Meals and transportation.
So, Joe, I'll speak with you.
Sure, go ahead.
So transportation turned out, with the models that are recommended, turned out to work better than we thought. Because we have our own buses, and we don't own our buses, but the buses that we have from First Student only serve Hinsdale students. So we could manage the buses. As you might have noticed in the parent survey, there are a lot of parents who plan to drive. So there's a much smaller contingent. We're looking at having someone at the bus stops, parent who would be rotating relative to making sure the students social distance before they get on the bus. We have a pattern by which they get on and off. If we needed extra money for transportation, which we might need a little, not much, the COVID money is directly related to that expense. So I think transportation was, we came in thinking it was going to be very complicated. We met with the manager and the person who does all of the scheduling for First Student on 2 occasions, and we're confident that this will work if we choose the models that have been recommended. So I guess with that, we're open for questions.
Meals on 37. So there's detail on page 35 to 37 around this topic.
So I was just wondering how staggered arrival and dismissal times will work with transportation, if that's gonna, basically how it's gonna look.
So there's one bus run, H3, one that goes downtown Northfield Road, Chesterfield Road, down towards Winchester. They have a large, in both the middle high school and the elementary school, it's a large stop at the bank. So one of the other buses, H1 or H2, the bus company will have them make their run. Whichever one is the first one, usually back, would make a second run to pick up students at the bank, just those children. Bring them up to the middle school, and high school, and elementary school, not in one run, but the extra run. So we don't envision that there's really gonna be that much staggered time. There was a little bit more, again, 3 to 6 feet allows a little bit more relaxed social distancing on the buses. And like Wayne said, there's a lot of parents that have indicated that they won't be riding the bus. So the staggered times, we'll have to work out the dismissals and we'll have to work out getting into the building, but staggered times really will only be that H3 stop.
Oh. So parent drop-offs, we're not gonna have to like stagger by grade or anything. It's basically just gonna be the one bus.
Yeah, we're not going to stagger like we're anything
Okay,
right now.
okay, right.
Today.
For everything.
I don't know.
At night.
That's the elementary school. And I don't know.
Well, it's a similar situation with H3 because we've got a lot of kids that feed into that from Depot Street, all that area. So that will be a quick second run because it's only a mile away, but the kids certainly have to walk a great distance to get there. We're going to have 3 entry and egress points, so the buses will pick up and drop off right here in the front entryway. We're going to have parent pick up and drop off and through the gym lobby. And then we'll have student drivers or kids who walk come in through that cafeteria doorway. Each entry will have 2 staff. And I think we will do screening. We're doing it now for summer school. And the kids are very cooperative. It's a quick thing with the temperature. It's very fast. And I think we've got it down to like 10 minutes to do 30 kids. So it's going faster than it did the first day, but I think the luxury of time as we open up those opening days, it will be a slow process.
I think Jim had a question.
So in the transportation section, we talked a little bit about the sports schedules, and I just was wondering if Wayne could maybe elaborate a little bit more on what we are expecting to see in terms of sports this year.
So the NHIAA is waiting until they hear from schools relative to their plans. So my thinking is in about 2 weeks, we will have an opinion. And at this point, I believe the opinion will be that sports will run in a modified way. They'll probably try to reduce the length of the trips, and games will be on weekends. So that's what it appears, but that guidance has not been released. They're very close. You know, they've been asked every day, when is it going to, and their party line is they're waiting until they hear from more districts in regards to whether there will be opening that would not be remote. Now, obviously, if schools are so uncomfortable that they're remote, then the athletic programs through NHIAA would not be running. I wouldn't believe they do that contrary to the schools. But.
So, and I'm gonna go back and re-listen to this portion of the committee meeting that I listened to today, because I believe I missed some of what they were saying. So I don't know if this question will even make sense, but a lot of districts who participated in that meeting are also seeing a big decrease in ridership. So, you know, parents are don't want to put their kid on the bus. And I thought one of the districts said that impacts funds that we get from the state. They were talking about revenue being down because ridership was down, which I didn't quite understand. So I want to re-listen to it. Does that make any sense?
I would have to ask Tom to respond, but there are transportation funds, for example, to Career Center. There's some of that money. We have gotten very little. I think it's almost nothing. I don't even know if we submit a request, it's so low. So I don't think this is a big money item for Hinsdale.
For us, okay.
But there is, for some schools, let's say in Adnot, when their kids that go to the Career Center, Cheshire Center, and Keene, it's probably a little more money for them to do.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Hinsdale does not apply for or receive any state revenues from transportation. Some of the districts that send high school students to a career center at a longer distance than ours, it makes sense for them to get the transportation cost reimbursed. Our proximity to Wyndham Career Center means that we're getting pennies for each student day, and it just doesn't even make sense to try and track that and ask for it. It would have amounted to, less than $1,000. So it's not something that we've been doing.
Okay.
The Rain Man.
Yeah, he's the Rain Man. Meals are right on that same page, and it's the same committee for meals. So I would defer to them again for details.
So Joe, you want to just do the elementary and do the middle high? They understand it at the granular level. And so I do the overview. I think you want to. Okay.
So starting with breakfast at the elementary, the custodians and paras will assist in getting carts. We purchased some new carts, and the breakfast will be delivered. It'll be a pretty standard, consistent thing. Monday through Friday, it's going to be the same type of menu. It's not going to have a lot of variety. But that will be there for distribution. The Abbey group, Kelly told me that the Abbey group personnel can't go into the rooms to distribute it. So it'll be a para or a teacher that's going to be helping to distribute the breakfast. They'll have that in the classroom, and we'll have to do a classroom cleanup after breakfast is over, remove the trash, and then in the process right now of setting up, if we are mostly in school, schedule to make sure that there's a way to get a half-hour lunch for each person. Again, the lunches will be delivered on the cart. They'll have the first choice. They'll have 2 deli choices, and the students at the elementary school historically have really liked the yogurt and fruit type of offering, so they'll also have that choice. They'll make that choice in their homeroom in the morning, just like they always do. Money will be handled the same way as it always has been. Typically, parents will send checks in at the elementary school, and it goes right to the kitchen. Occasionally, they'll have some money in an envelope, which will go right to the kitchen. So lunch will be served out of the cart based on their choices. We'll check off for the point of sale information that the lunch, like suppose Jim goes home sick and we have an extra tuna fish sandwich, then that goes back to the kitchen and they know that we didn't actually sell that lunch because Jim went home sick that day. So that's how we'll be keeping track of the point of sale and the Abbey Group kitchen staff. Instead of entering in real time as kids order their lunch, we'll be updating the sales through the sheets that we return back to them after lunch. And then the custodians will have, Sean's getting us some more trash barrels. We're going to work out something. We'll have enough trash barrels to remove the trash and wipe it down the desk and get back to trying to work in the afternoon.
So at the high school and middle school, breakfast isn't like the biggest thing of the day, but we want kids to pre-order so it will be delivered to their advisory room in the morning. That advisory period will be half hour every day. It'll be the opening thing. So when kids do come in the building, regardless of how they get here, they're going to go first to their advisory. We're not going to congregate in either the gym or the cafeteria. So they'll have their breakfast delivered there, and then they'll order their lunch. There's going to be 2 points of sale. We have Wi-Fi on the stage, so Kelly can sell food off the stage. She'll have us set up there. The things that normally would be like at the pizza and salad bar will be on stage, and other meals that are ordered. And then the other point of sale will be in the cafeteria. So Sean and I have looked at that. We figure we can have maybe 30 to 35 kids eat lunch in the cafeteria, but the other students will be eating in classrooms, and those will be supervised by staff. So they'll get their lunch. We've looked at the two-way traffic flow. I think we can keep the kids physically apart. They're doing really well right now. So it's a matter of practice and making clear that the expectation is safe distancing, even if you're in the lunch line. Pre-ordering will help us go faster because it'll be already packaged. Kelly has planned really nice meal packages, so you just pick it up and go. And for kids who want a brown bag lunch, that'll be an opportunity too. So if it's something that's hot, she's got containers that will keep it hot and they can take it and eat it. So That's our plan right now.
Nothing in news, huh? All right.
So I think you can see how much detail has been put into this. All right, a lot of thought. You can see evidence. I don't think these guys are getting much sleep either. All right, so moving on to, is it the right to move on, John? Okay, PD, which we've talked a lot about already, so I don't know that I need to get into it any further, except to just remind you that the committee is recommending that the unions meet with the board and open up negotiations we're recommending to take the October workshop day, the March workshop day, and the May workshop day and move them to the front of the year for some of this much needed professional development. And that would mean that we would have students come to schools on those days that are currently in the calendar as workshop days, and they wouldn't come to school for those 3 professional development days. So it wouldn't be a loss of student days for those 3 days. It would just be a change in the calendar and when they would come. So we're recommending that. I'm sorry I forgot to put it in the plan, but please write that down because it is a recommendation from the committee.
So, so you're saying, are you saying that we would add those, we would move those days that were, you know, during the year PD days to the front, but it's not, and the kids would come later than now. So it wouldn't change the date that teachers have to come. So and I could be wrong, this might be a question for Matt Upton, but if we aren't changing the date that teachers have to come, like we're not moving it up and saying you have to come 3 days earlier, I don't know if that is a negotiated issue with the union because the school board has purview over the calendar. They can give input, but it's the school board decision just like every year. So that might be something to check with Matt Upton, that if we're not saying, okay, teachers, you were going to come on X date, now you need to come 3 days earlier, that would, I think, would be negotiated. But if we're just moving some days around and moving the kids later, I would suggest if we could, if Wayne or Sean can check with Matt Upton about that, we might not even have to take that step of renegotiating it because we're really not changing the teacher's start date.
Okay, I
Yeah.
don't know that answer. Wayne?
In the contract, it says that the teachers will have input relative to, so I think it would be very easy for me to sit down with Sarah. I don't see any downside for most teachers. I think this would be just easy for me to make sure that there's nothing we're not seeing. We could probably do it. We probably have the authority.
But as with the regular calendar, we find that the membership is rarely consulted, so it's not just sitting with the leadership. So make sure that, you know, membership.
Okay. All right. Well.
I think Sarah's on this committee, and she said she would bring it to the membership. That's what she said out loud in the meeting. And I defer to your judgment and all that. That's not my area, but it's something that we're recommending.
What the bottom line that this team is recommending is the change in the calendar for those 3 days. But in addition to that, is we're recommending that you take those other offer of 3 days that I learned about today and tack that on. So that would give us, actually, that would give teachers the 3 days at the front of the year that we've just talked about, and an additional 3 days to work on all these protocols that the governor is giving us, meaning that would be a less time students had in school by 3 days. It could be up to 3 days or 3 days. I'm one member of the committee. I'm not even going to be here, but I think you need it. I'm just giving you my best advice. So that would be 6 days, plus we already have 2 other days because one is a district day and one is a principal day. And I think that in our conversations, we're talking about this is important. We need to focus on this work. We can give up that time. There is a lot of work to be done. And we can't require people to come in the summer. We knew a lot would come in and a lot have and are giving a lot, but we can't require it. We need everybody here. The only way we can require it is if you're under contract. So that's why I'm recommending it. And I know that the committee recommends all of it, and they didn't know about these other 3 days that we just learned about today. So you see what we are hoping to do. We were hoping for in-house facilitators, and I want to say the CARES money is paying not only for the people to come to some trainings, overviews in the summer that are invitational, but it's also paying for the in-house facilitators. They're getting a little money to organize and plan. For example, Karen Thompson has already agreed, and Kat's the person to talk to about this. She held a meeting today, Kat McLaughlin. But I know that I talked to Karen Thompson before Kat even came on board about this, and Karen committed to being the teacher, the facilitator on advisory. She has a lot of experience in this area. And so she would get paid some money to prep for that. That's coming out of the CARES money. It's not, we're not paying what we pay, you know, to have Microsoft come in and do a big workshop, but we might have to pay Microsoft to do some support training. We want them available for questions and answers, but we also have in-house people who are experts to technology to offer some support groups. So we have a lot of in-house experts that we feel we can count on, but they have to get paid a little money for that. And that's coming out of the CARES money. At least it's budgeted in my mind.
I understand it a bit more after just hearing what Karen was speaking to. I had some confusion as to, you know, we talked about making the first 3 days of the school PD days and having the kids come in late, but we aren't actually adding any days that the teachers, the staff is expected to be here. So then my question came, then why are we spending $50,000 of COVID money for PD when we're not actually asking any more days of them?
It's not all PD. Some of it is work they've just done. And one thing I need to remind people is that we're paying teachers $25 an hour for this work they're doing this summer. But when you pay them $25 an hour, you have to add to that retirement and Social Security. So you're really paying them more than $25 an hour. You're paying more like $30-some an hour. Not them. They only get the 25. So it goes fast. That money goes fast. You know, I've done 2 payrolls, and Kat will continue to do it with Pollock's help. And I don't know if you kept a running tally, Pollock, but it's a lot of money we've already spent. You know. The people on the task, not the people who are year round, but the people who are on a teacher. So like Joe and Ann didn't get paid, or Wayne didn't get paid. You know, it's the people who are just on a regular teacher's contract. They're getting paid. That goes fast. So and then if you add to that the invitational training we're doing in August, I don't know who will come, but we had to guesstimate who we thought we'd pay them $25 an hour to come to get an overview of SEL or you know, the leadership team for social emotional learning. We have leadership teams meeting, they're getting paid already. So I think those have been about 3 to 4 hours of training they've had so far. Those people are getting trained, and I think there are, you know, like 15 people for 4 hours of training. You can see how it mounts up quickly. And then these task forces met minimally 8 hours a week, minimally. And sometimes these people are serving on 2 committees, so they're meeting an additional 4 hours. So they're meeting 12 hours a week. So it goes quickly, each one. I wish it were different, but it's important. Yeah. Sure, no. Thank you. That's what I have to say about PD, and I'm sure that Kat will be telling you a lot more about it in the future. I know they met today, the Professional Development Committee, and they're already planning things. You're welcome.
There's going to be things that, you know, may or may not have to be, you know, negotiated either in the para contract or the teacher's contract, whatever. So it's probably a good idea, Wayne, if you and I have a conversation at some point very soon to kind of iron out the points and probably call Matt up then to iron out the points that we would have to speak to unions about.
My guess, man, is very busy right now.
Yep.
You'll get back to me usually.
Right. Yeah, but you and I can at least have a preliminary conversation and kind of think of what some of those things would be. Does anyone else have anything for PD? No, we need to be looking at all of this. You know, we'll need to, you know, accept the presentation, I guess, the presentation. Yeah, well.
Except the report.
Except we have to.
That just means that you can find any glaring,
Right.
inconsistencies you want to present the report, and then we'll act on the report.
Right, so we can do that afterwards. But Karen, I'm sorry, go ahead. Unless there's anything else.
But just in closing, on page 13 are the recommendations for reopening. We're recommending that Hinsdale Elementary School open using the full access plan that's you've heard us describe, keeping in mind all the considerations that we also described. And we recommend that the middle high school open using the hybrid modified full access plan that was described. That means they're all in, but some of the kids aren't always with their teacher, but that would be true even at the elementary school. We feel confident that we have a solid remote plan should we need to pivot, and that could happen. So that's all I really have here. I really appreciated leaving, finishing my career doing this work was important, I think. So you're very welcome. Take any questions. And I appreciate the team.
Anyone else have any wrapping up questions for Karen? Nothing? All right, so let's do this. And let's address the comments that have come in, since the beginning of the meeting.
Can the school board speak up? We don't have to.
No, we can skip those ones because we did the best we could on that.
I can't see.
Can you read them again?
One person speaking at a time. I'm just gonna get to the ones. Really hard to hear everyone. Those are early on. Yeah, there's. Not a lot of families responded to the survey. Were families allowed to vote more than once? There's no way we could have controlled that. So the answer to that question is yes.
Don't they put their names on it? I'm sorry.
Yeah. On 143, there were no repeats.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. I just did.
So we had to wait.
Okay, all right. I'd like to flicker. As an employee, I'm not comfortable putting my health in the hands of 143 families to monitor their kids. Maybe getting ahead of the discussion as a parent of a first grader, they have runny noses all the time. And will students be able to log in remotely if they have to be home sick but feel fine? Or will they need to quarantine due to possible exposure?
It sounds like they want to be open, right?
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the things that we're going to be working on. Can that be repeated?
I keep my kid home because I think they might be sick. Are you going to force me to keep my kid home before 2 days? That's the question.
Yeah, and I don't think that's going to be the case. Everybody can hear Tom fine. We just couldn't. Okay. I understand the difficult situation that we're all in, but as a parent, I would like to know before August 5th as to what we are doing. I know many of you are in the same boat, but I need to know what to do regarding my job in supporting my family and what I'm going to need to do to support all of my children's learning. I've been weighing the scenarios, but many folks need to know sooner.
Yeah, I agree.
Sean is saying he agrees with the question.
We need to make it clear that whatever decision
Everybody, I'm gonna finish saying what I have to say.
Yeah.
We
gotta make sure everybody
can. So I agree with that comment. I mean, I also need to know, I can't promise that we're going to have something before August 5th because there's a lot to go through. If we can have something before August 5th, I don't think anyone would object to doing something sooner if we can, but that's a really big if. So I can't make that promise. I don't think anyone here can, but we will do our best to get through all of this stuff just as soon as we can and make the best possible decision.
We can hear you, Tom. We can hear you, Tom. I also think I also think we should screen adults and students. Even if students may be asymptomatic, at least we know, at least we tested, and the school should be next line of defense in case parents haven't, for whatever reason. Also, how do we hear transportation options? I missed that and I apologize. I think this came in before the transportation options. I don't think we missed the transportation's office. We haven't heard anything. The staff has not been surveyed since June. So much data has changed since then. It might be helpful to survey us again. As a parent of 2 seriously chronic medical kiddos, I'm curious if we are trusting staff families to screen themselves. How are chronic medically kids protected? Let's be practical. Not all families are going to do temperature checks, etc. I think we've addressed some of that in some of this, and it will be addressed further going further. I second what Jess said. I certainly feel differently. Would be curious to how the staff votes now that everything is closer.
Is there something we can do to address that? I mean, just realistically, is there? The answer is no, the answer is no.
I don't know, I think we just need to ask a question with Matt, what we can ask.
I've got to call in the man to do that.
Okay. Also, thank you, Joe, for carrying around the microphone. I hear you on the survey with ideally a larger sample size, but time is of the essence here. I hate suggestion online, but maybe a phone survey also. Mail has a longer turnaround and not great compliance. I would suggest any survey have a short window. Analyzing results takes time too. So many of us need to know ASAP. I'm sure teachers and support staff need to know as well. We tried every type of survey we can. I mean, we have surveyed people out. Losing the sound. Paras and guidance teachers need laptops so they can assist kids remotely and be able to keep a 3 to 6 feet distance while assisting them in at least the high school. This was a problem when we were remote before, that the staff was required to use personal computers. Also, high school kids need to be made accountable.
Do we have a way to address?
We're trying.
K1, 2, K1 don't have devices.
Yeah. Thanks, Joe, for moving around that mic. It did. Okay, that's it.
All right, that's it. That's there now.
Yep.
All right. So for everyone who has stuck with us this long, I'm going to open it up for questions and stuff for 10 minutes. I'm going to give you some time to type. Because it takes.
Unless you, why don't I just go around and ask people if they have a question?
Can they raise their hand?
They can't raise their hand on this. They can raise it. So, Jody, do you have anything you need to say?
She's not there.
Maybe she's not. Sarah Burgess, do you have anything?
Oh, I'm sorry. This is Jody. I didn't realize you were calling on me. No, I'm good.
Okay, Sarah Burgess.
I'm good for now. Thank you.
Elise?
I'm all set for now. Thank you, guys.
Welcome. Karen Thompson?
I'm all set, except I just want to give a huge shout out to Karen Craig for sticking with us and carrying us through this very tedious and difficult process. Thank you, Karen.
Yes, thank you, Karen.
Yay.
I'm all set, thank you.
Steve Becto? You have anything, Steve? Well, I guess not. Penny, do you have anything?
No, I don't. Thank you.
You're welcome. Julie?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Who iPad is? Lindsay?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I do believe that staff input is crucial, and it can be done rather quickly, and a time can be put on it, and you can just ask staff for their feedback. And I also just wanted to clarify to Wayne's question. I couldn't hear you guys very well, so I apologize if it was put in there. But the $14,000 for expenditures, if you're going to be looking into things depending on the way you vote for which model you put into, to think of what our needs are and the needs to be met, knowing that pre-K to 1 do not have technology, and the other needs that need to be looked at would be something that I would just like you to think about also. So thank you.
Thank you. Jess Maloney?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I wrote down just a couple of thoughts and questions as they came up, so I will read them and then I will mute myself.
You already read them, Jess.
No, some on a piece of paper. So I'm concerned because I don't know how to keep small children apart from each other when they want to hug each other. I'm not sure how to enforce distancing in the hallways or during lockdown drills. I really don't understand how specials will work when I still need to see 300 kids. And I'm very concerned about substitutes. We already have a substitute shortage. And honestly, right now, they're going to make more money on unemployment than they will putting themselves in danger at our school. But most importantly, I think that because we voted in June when the numbers were low, and now that numbers are much higher, we really need some staff input again and another vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Karen, some of that will be done in PD? Some of the handling of the kids that Jess was talking about? As far as she was talking about, how would it keep them, from running up and hugging and social distancing?
3 days that the governor, if you allow
Right.
for those 3 days, that's when I think it would be.
Okay, all right.
Pat, do you have anything? Okay. Sean Robinson? Can't access her mic. Erica, do you have anything you want to say? I know you had a question.
I just put in a comment. Sorry.
I've got
I had just messaged a comment in regards to as being a staff member and a parent. I think the decision needs to be made sooner rather than later because I know a lot of planning goes into both.
Thank you. Quentin? Megan Conrad?
No, I'm good. Thanks, guys.
You're welcome. Nicole Buckley? Yeah, Debbie?
All set, Ann.
Okay, Matt Kennedy, do you have anything? Okay. Jen Taggart?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, so as a parent of 3 kids in this school district and as the preschool teacher, I do have lots of concerns, and we've been really following, my family has been following the spread of this virus, and it just seems that I know my children will be learning remotely next year. It does not seem safe to be having children, and I hear it, 3 feet is not enough. It's just not safe. My personal and professional feeling is that we should be learning remotely. 1% of children, the fatality rate is still too much, I believe.
Thank you, Jen. Catherine, do you have anything? Karen? Karen Hammond?
Sorry, I hope I don't echo like crazy. Can you hear me? Okay. All right, great. I guess my last question, sorry I was so chatty on the comments, but what we're waiting for now for August 5th, I guess I missed part of that discussion with kids running around and stuff, but why August 5th got brought up is because of the backup $14,000 that we don't know if we have yet? Is that what we're waiting on?
So the August 5th date is a date that we have out there because we know we need to get information out to parents and staff and stuff as quickly as possible. There's no way, I know I'll speak for myself, that, you know, we got this information on Monday in draft form and we're going through it tonight. I don't think it's responsible personally of the board to be getting all this information tonight and saying, yes, this is the decision that we have to come to. We have items that we don't know if they need to be negotiated. We have to put our own thoughts together. We have to look at this individually and as a group to determine, you know, basically what course of action that, you know, the board thinks that we need to take, because ultimately we're responsible. So as I was saying, you know, before we were reading the comments, if we can do that and get it done, you know, before August 5th, you know, knowing that people need information as soon as possible, we can certainly do that, but we don't want to kind of rush into it and make a decision that we're going to regret.
I get that, but I guess the part that I don't fully understand is, and I don't want to I don't want this to come out sounding bad, because I know there's a lot of work that went into this, and it sounds like Karen, you know your stuff, and it's amazing what you've done and what you guys have put together. But I'm wondering why this date was now. Like, why wasn't this a few weeks ago so we could have that decision made by the end of July at the latest?
Right, because we didn't have the guidelines from the state. We didn't have the guidelines from the task force that was put together to examine reopening. Once that was all done, and that was a big process all in of itself. Then that stuff had to go to the governor. The governor had to review it, send that down to us. We got a head start on what we wanted to do, kind of pending what they were going to tell us to do. So had we done what some other districts have done and kind of, you know, waited on them more, we would have had a later date. So this is actually, even August 5th is, you know, kind of an early date. I mean, not for every district. Some districts already kind of have a plan, but we got started ahead of time pending the finalization of the state guidelines. And those only just came down to us, was it 14th? July 4th, we got July 14th.
Yeah, I think I watched him giving that speech too.
Yeah, it's been a very tight timeline.
Yeah, and I know we've all had kind of like this ABC kind of scenario. Like, we've all thought, is it going to be all remote? Is it going to be all in? Or are we going to do some kind of hybrid? And I know that's, I guess, it's just frustrating. But I'm wondering, I'm just going to throw this out there and shoot me down if you must, but is there a reason this can't be decided by next week?
We don't know. We're going to talk about, after we're done with the citizens' comments, we're going to talk about what our next meetings are, because, you know, we're not going to wait until August 5th, you know, to have our next meeting. You know what I mean?
Oh,
like,
I know you have one in between.
Have
but
at least one, and I don't want to get hurt, but we're going to have at least one or two or whatever many meetings we have to have, you know, and I'm already seeing eye rolling and everything else. So, but we're going to, you know, do what we need to do to get it done, you know, quickly and thoroughly. You know, so it may be earlier, it may not, but we're going to try.
All right. And my last question is, assuming you guys, or whatever, we all decide, yes, this is going to be the hybrid or whatever plan you guys go with, will there be a backup plan in place in case things do go south and then we have to go back to remote learning, you know, altogether again? Is that going to be part of the plan?
I would say that's pretty much a sure thing.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Shelley? You have anything?
I'm all set.
Thank you. Kelly Cruz?
Excuse me.
PW? Do you have anything? Cassie Ricker, do you have anything?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Can.
Okay, I just think that you should have some more accurate or up-to-date staff survey, because I mean, we're the ones in the school with the kids and being exposed and stuff. So I feel that that's important to get staff feedback more up to date.
Thank you. Teresa? Do you have anything?
Yes, I want to thank you guys for, yes, can you hear me?
Barely.
Go ahead.
Okay, is that better?
Yep.
Okay, so thank you for hosting the meeting, and although it's really nice to see, it seems like more involvement on the Zoom meetings than what typically happens at school board meetings, I might recommend that we hold the school board meetings at a larger venue, maybe the gymnasium, so more people can be involved and be present, because there's been a lot of technical difficulties. And the other things, I just want to thank you, Sean, for talking about the need for more meetings. I understand that you guys are all, elected officials, that you have very busy lives, but I want to echo that, having a plan sooner than later would be best for many parents and staff as people need to plan. So having those side meetings is going to be really important. So just thank you for acknowledging that those need to occur.
They hate me, Teresa.
Shauna, do you have anything?
Sorry, Ann, did you say Shauna?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, sorry. No, I think my questions have already been addressed by previous.
Okay, I think I have everyone now.
And were there any comments that came in afterwards or during?
They're just, plans needs to be in place ASAP. I'm all set, thank you. The opportunity, my internet is being temperamental. That's from Sean Robinson.
Okay.
Caitlin says I can't answer my mic, but I don't have any questions. Lindsay said I would also like to know that the HES plan was voted both 5-3. We did note that, Lindsay. Based on the steering committee's 66 majority vote rule, it was not a majority vote.
Okay.
That was a task force.
Yep.
It wasn't the committees. It was the elementary school portion of the. Am I saying that right, Karen? Okay.
So I'm gonna ask. There's another one.
Ann?
Yeah.
This is Kelly Cruz talking. Kelly Cruz?
Yeah.
Can I make a comment?
Go ahead, Kelly.
We did call on you, Kelly, but you didn't unmute, so we didn't think you had.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I've been sitting here for 3 hours. I really appreciate everybody's time and effort that they've put into this. It's a new journey we're on. However, being a staff member, I feel that some things should come out that didn't work well with the remote that I don't think are going to be changing in the proposal. Of that is making the kids accountable. I'm talking high school kids. Because even though Office 365 will tell you when they come on, if they come on and are doing a recorded lesson and they need to contact a teacher, then they're gonna not, if they're dialing it at 9 o'clock at night, they're not gonna have the support of the teacher. And we did have that where kids were wanting support after 5 o'clock from teachers and parents. So that is a major concern of mine, is making the kids accountable. The other thing is, as far as staff, we do need laptops to be able to distance the 3 to 6 feet. If a child is writing a documentation, they can write that, they can send it to me at the other end of the table, and I can discuss with them what's going on without having to hover over them or look at what they're doing. And it's crucial. And you have people using their own personal computers, which I don't think they should be having to do if you go remote. it's a liability, I think, to the school to having us use our own personal computers. And again, I thank everybody for their time. I really appreciate it.
May I read a comment from Nicole Buckley? Thank you. Sorry, she's having technical difficulties. Nicole Buckley wrote, I have concerns working in preschool for keeping the distance with kids and toys. Most of preschool is play-based and there isn't enough time to disinfect to prevent possible exposure. I also worry about students' behaviors because it exposes staff to spitting or bodily fluids, such as in the bathroom. I am uncertain how we will keep kids, staff, and families safe if the exposure is potentially there.
Thank you, Nicole.
All right, so there are obviously several common themes that we should all keep in mind, and I don't know, I kind of feel like there's some common themes that we should kind of add. Okay. All right, so obviously we're going to set a schedule like next. We're going to look at our calendars, we're going to set a schedule. You know, if we can do something sooner rather than later, that's great, but you know, we know that we have that August 5th date, you know, there. And it's Karen's last day, otherwise she would kill me. But, you know, we've heard several times about people wanting to give staff anyway, wanting to give new input in some form of a survey or something like that. So I don't know if that's something that can happen.
I think it's be very carefully constructed to result. You know, certain ways you can ask them.
Yep.
So I think maybe we're talking about that.
Okay.
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean,
but we have to be careful about how you ask.
exactly, exactly. So maybe that's something that we can look at, and like you said, with those guidelines. I know we only have limited laptops, but we had a couple of requests on there that staff be able to have the equipment that they need in the form of laptops. So we might want to kind of take a look at, like, can we do something to meet that need, because it has been brought up. But as we know, even if we say, okay, we have funds over here, we can do this for them today, there's going to be a huge shift. So, but I would encourage to see if there's a way that we can get the staff the equipment that they need in the form of technology. Kayla?
Staff input again before we make our decision, because I do feel like a lot of this was riding on staff support, and I think that might have changed. So I personally really need to hear something from staff before I make a decision.
I certainly appreciate everybody's eagerness to get an understanding of what the plan is for the school and how important the date is, as to kind of speak as to why it didn't happen before now. We heard Karen say they started this in May. I don't think we could have asked any more of a Herculean effort from the task force and our administration and the people that were involved in this. They want to do it and they want to do it right. But I also don't think we've stressed enough tonight, in my personal opinion, that we will make a plan based on these recommendations. We'll meet as a board and we'll come to a consensus and let you know as quickly as possible. That is an as of that date. We talked about a little bit how, and I don't think we talked enough about it, how we're ready to go remote if necessary. You know, we're hearing staff and people talk about getting more concerned than they were 2 weeks ago about coming back to school. If that continues to trend, we need to all be prepared to change on a dime, with the understanding that we're so much more better prepared to do so, because as much work has gone into that, being prepared for that, I believe, as for the other scenario. So it's not going to be an end all and be all on August 6th. I feel like everybody needs to understand that.
I just don't think we're gonna have the absolute best plan. I think we're gonna have a good plan, but it's not gonna satisfy everybody. So no matter what we do, there's gonna be a certain percentage of the citizens or the staff that aren't gonna be happy with what we do. And then we have to be ready, as Julie said, that you have to be ready to pivot, one way or the other based on ever-changing circumstances. So we just need to be very flexible this year, as does the staff.
I just want to, obviously say thank you, and Karen and everybody that's in this. Thank you to the administration and the rest of the board. But I do agree that, that and this is the charge of everything the school board does, is children first. So we have to do, this monumental, unprecedented task of figuring this out with the children first. And the people who are in that building, the safety of everyone in that building. And I mean, there's a broad consideration of everybody, the parents, the taxpayers, everybody, but we are 5 people making the maybe life or death decision for every person in that building. So we're going to take our time, as fast as we can, and do the best that we can. And we appreciate everybody's support.
All right, so with all of that, let's get those calendars out, people, and let's see what we got. As am I. I have an appointment on Friday that I can cancel, but other than that, I understand that, but I'm open between now and the 5th. Yeah, I can be available. So, trying to think now. I think it's beneficial for Wayne and I to have a conversation regarding negotiations. Okay. But we can do that by phone even. I think it's going to be important for you guys to have at least a couple days to wrap your head around all this. Would it be helpful for you guys to jot down any questions, like lingering questions after the next couple of days that you think that we can even email in ahead of time? All right, so why don't we do that? Why don't we task ourselves the next couple of days, put together any questions that come to mind after you think about it, everything you heard tonight that might be hanging out there. Send them to me. I will get them to Wayne, and then he can he can spread them out from there. Then we need to get together to basically discuss what comes of that. And I'm thinking that should be early next week, right? Tuesday would be okay. Are you guys okay with doing a Tuesday meeting? Can we do who? Okay. I mean, we can try doing Mondays are a horrible day for me, but I'll do it. I mean, they're like god awful, but I'll do it. Okay, that's kind of where I was going. Okay. All right. So Tuesday, the 28th. Wayne, you're good with that? 6:15, is that? All right, so 6:15. And that'll be a board work session, and we can determine if there's anyone we need to pull in for that. And Wayne, you and I can have that conversation. Okay. Okay. All right, and then my suggestion would be at that meeting on that Tuesday, and I think we should probably, I think that in order to think clearly and to not make exhaustive decisions, we should set a time limit on that meeting, honestly. And I think that, 2-hour max, and then at the end of that time, we need to gauge our comfort level. Do we need to have another one? Are we comfortable making a decision? Do we then wait until the 5th? But we kind of need, I think, that meeting to make that determination to see where we're at. I mean, unless anyone has any other ideas. Yep, we can do that. I mean, I can do a 2-hour on Tuesday and a 2-hour Are you guys comfortable with the back-to-back, or would you need time in between? I don't know. Right. Right. Yep. So, but the question is, do we want it to be the next day, or like, do we need a day in between?
Oh, then I guess I would say I thought next Tuesday and the 5th.
Oh, next Tuesday and the 5th, and that's it?
Yeah, if we need more information Tuesday, we might not be able to get it together.
Well, Kayla is suggesting setting up a backup day just in case that we don't have to necessarily keep.
Oh, if we don't need it, then but if we need it. So the 28th, 29th, 5th? We need to get it.
Pull my calendar back up. Right, that's my concern with doing the 28th and 29th. Like, so the 28th and the 5th we have, all right? And I understand that Wayne's only here, Monday through Wednesday, but I mean, it's a pandemic. All right. Do you guys have vacations coming up?
I'm available next 2 weeks.
No pressure, Ann. Karen's not. Karen's the only one that's free and clear. So if we needed that extra date, I would rather do the 30th to give us time in case we needed information.
Can we do the 31st?
Yes. Yes. So? Okay. Why don't we try to finish, why don't we put down the 30th and we'll just try to do it on the 28th. We'll try to make that work. Okay. So why don't we try to do, Jim? Let's confirm Tuesday the 28th at 6:15, and we'll confirm August 5th, which whatever day the week that is. Yep. Right, and we'll just keep that 30th up in the air. We'll decide on the 28th.
Yeah, I can certainly.
And that's fine. All right, so that's all I have for scheduling. Then we have a non-public. Well, actually, we have other business. Other business, I have the select board. The select board wants to do a joint meeting on September 21st. I emailed everybody. It sounds like everyone's available. Is everyone fine September 21st? Probably the 6:15, 6:30 range. All right, we'll put that in the minutes. Yes. I do not want to do the gym. The gym echoes way too much, and even during town meeting, it's difficult. So if we want to do a different venue than this, it would be the cafeteria, but I would prefer here. And it's up to you guys. It's not my show. Okay. I think the gym it echoes way too much. Okay. Go ahead, Jim. Okay. Okay. All right, so if nobody else has anything, then we're just going to go into non-public. So I'll just need a motion to that effect. Motion and a second to go to non-public. Roll call. Yes, 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 and yes. All right. Non-public time with the board and the superintendent, please.